All right, and welcome everyone to this edition of Xtreme Sports. Thank you to everybody who's joining us here tonight. Look forward to having a very passionate and educational conversation. I am your main host tonight, the one, the only, the X Factor, Xavier McKnight. We've been gone for quite some time, but we're back now and ready to get back into the full swing of things. Like I said earlier, I'm joined here by some great people this evening, including my brother, the one, the only, Randolph Barratt, better known as, and it might have been Hoodie Dolph. What's going on, my brother? Dolph, I believe you're muted.
No, I'm here.
No, I believe you were on mute because I couldn't hear you.
All right, you can hear me now?
Yeah, you good.
All right, well, yeah. It's more so Dolph now. Got rid of the hoodie for right now, but glad to be back on the show. First time in 2020. I'm glad to have you all join us as well for a very night.
And once again, a shout out to everybody in the room right now. It's very few of us here right now, so I'll go ahead and I'll give out some personal shout outs first before we get to the topic at hand. Thank you to Mariah Hill, Clark Atlanta University graduate, just recently a few months ago, for joining us. My Morehouse brother, Lawrence Vaughn, is in the building. We appreciate him for joining us. A big brother, Eli West, is in the building. Of course, we appreciate him joining us. And a former guest on Xtreme Sports who is now doing his own thing with his own podcast now, the Players Game Podcast. The one and only Destin Johnson is in the building. Destin, what's going on, bro? You know we appreciate you being here.
What's up, fellas? How y'all doing? Hey, everybody. How y'all doing?
How you doing? How you doing?
Good, man. We good. Good to see you again.
Yes. Good to see y'all, man.
Yeah, it's definitely good to see everybody. Of course, we wish we were here this evening on better circumstances, but unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in. But nonetheless, it is definitely good to see some familiar faces and also see some new faces as well. And before we get to tonight's topic, I would just like to just open up by sending out and speaking on behalf of the entire Xtreme Sports team, our heartfelt prayers and thoughts to everybody in Louisiana and Texas and everybody who's in the path of Hurricane Laura right now. Hearing reports now from the National Weather Service that the storm is now being downgraded to a tropical storm, but it's still a very powerful tropical storm nonetheless. We do have some media friends, Lawrence and I in particular, our NABJ sister, Megan Glover. She's down in Louisiana right now. We've heard from Megan. She said that she's doing just fine. They're just without power right now. So, you know, we're glad to hear that everybody's doing fine for the most part. But we'd also like to send our condolences out to those families for those 3 tragedies that we heard happen as a result of this hurricane. 3 fatalities have been confirmed so far. So we definitely send our condolences out to those families and prayers and best wishes to everybody that's still in the path of the storm. Be vigilant. Continue to listen to your local meteorologists, your local newscasts, and take all the steps that you need to take to remain as safe as possible during this time. And also, as everybody knows, man, we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So we like to continue to remind everybody to remain vigilant, be responsible. Please wear your mask, put your gloves on, don't touch your face. Please don't gather in large crowds. And a thank you and a shout out to everybody who is doing all of those things too, by the way, because we hear so much of people harping on this person isn't doing this person isn't doing that, but we don't give enough round of applauses and pats on the backs to those people who are doing the things that they need to do. And I'm not somebody who always necessarily agrees with or falls in line with this mentality of we should be applauding people for doing the right thing. But in this case, we should be applauding people for doing the right thing because it's many people out there that we see that aren't following the CDC guidelines, that aren't being vigilant, that aren't using the common sense that they should be using during this time. But we also have many people who are doing those things. So a thank you and a shout out to all of those people who are doing those things. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, just continue to remain safe and healthy during this time and be vigilant, be responsible, take care of yourself, take care of your neighbor, take care of everybody throughout this entire thing. The only way we're going to get through this thing is if we all take care of each other and we make sure that everybody is doing the right thing. So with all of that being said, let's move into the topic at hand tonight, man. And unfortunately, it's another one of these police shootings taking place involving another unarmed black man. This one in particular being Jacob Blake, the 29-year-old black man that was shot 7 times in the back in Kenosha, Wisconsin by a police officer. And thankfully, he did not lose his life. But unfortunately, we learned from his father just a few days ago that he's paralyzed, and we are hearing that he is not expected to walk again. Just a very unfortunate set of circumstances nonetheless. As I said, we're grateful that his life was spared, but it really hurts that his life has been compromised for something that did not have to happen. Eli, I know you had a lot of things that you wanted to say on this topic yesterday, so I'd like to open up the floor with you on just anything you'd like to say. Just what were your initial reactions when you first learned about this shooting?
All right, so my first initial reaction was the same as it was with the Ahmaud Arbery. What happened with, him was tragic, and how justice was not handled as quickly and swiftly as it should have happened. It was the same as it was with George Floyd, and how we're still, months in, still waiting on justice for that. At the same time, it's continually being a cycle for me. And I don't want to say you start to become numb to a lot of things that's happening because it's pressed out to your face every single day or every single week, every single month. The same situation continually happens. At this point, it's no longer anger. As I said yesterday, anger just clouds your judgment, and it clouds just the way that you see things and the way to react to things. I think as a group of people and a society in general, we need to think about the next step and not just the moment. We have a lot of people that's hurting and grieving because of the constant thing of an unarmed African-American dying at the hands of a police officer and no justice being sought out. And I think my initial response to this one here was, why? Why again? In all honesty, you got an African-American man who's doing his job, doing his part as a civilian and trying to break up a fight between two individuals. And the first thing they try to bring up in all these situations are a track record. You're not the person you were before. As you've seen, even with all the felonies and, things that he's had in the past, sexual harassment, that's all they want to highlight, but not highlight that this person who had a past record was doing justice by helping the community, and that's not being highlighted. And that's never something that's highlighted is the good that someone can do. It's always the negative that they've done in the past. And for me, I think that we need to fix the way that we exemplify the negatives. It needs to be positive, the positive that a person can do and will do, and the positive that the person has done. Resisting arrest is one thing, but the way that it's handled is another. Me, for having a military experience, 7 years in the Army, as I always say, is that, we're trained on a monthly basis on how to handle a lot of different situations, right? And I believe that police officers should not have 3 or 4 months training and be able to roam the streets and handle a lot of situations the way that they do. I'm all for the not defunding, but redistributing the funds of police departments. There needs to be more training, a constant training. And I believe that that doesn't happen with just trying to defund the police department. It just starts off with training and who is giving those trainings. I don't think that cops should be training other cops how to be cops. I do believe that there needs to be someone else on the outside, either a prior military or someone specialized in just training certain individuals on how to handle certain situations. But that is going to be a lot of the stuff I will talk about today. And that's my initial reaction is what next? It's not about the right now, because the right now is the same thing that's going to be the right now come 2 months later. It's going to be the right now. So my initial reaction is always going to be what's next? How do we as a whole society move to the next step? So that's all I got.
And, before we go on to the next person, I'll just say I definitely agree with you on all of that there, because my initial reaction to all of this was very similar to yours. You don't want to numb yourself to it, because we realize that this could be any of us. We get that 100%. But at the same time, you're tired. You're tired of seeing it. You're tired of talking about it. And honestly, I really tried to numb myself to this until Tuesday afternoon when I actually stomached up enough to go watch the video. And it absolutely traumatized me. It hurt me. And as grateful as I am that this man has his life, I'm really hurt by the fact that he's been physically compromised and how he's going to have to live the remainder of his life for something that did not have to happen. DJ, I'm gonna go ahead and go to you next, and then we'll go to Mariah after you. What were your initial reactions to the shooting that happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin with Jacob Blake?
Man, I was hurt. Like Eli said, man, again, like when will it stop? It's just like I tried my best to avoid the videos because it's kind of like it's sickening. Like it's hard to watch, and then it's like it always happens. So, man, I'm just I agree with really Eli covered a lot of stuff I would have said. Just thinking about what's next, like. I feel like we do have to acknowledge our past so we can move forward. But a lot of people don't want to do that in America. So we also have to do that, I feel like, to move forward as a country. And just like he said about the narrative, I feel like if we can't change the narrative, we might have to start creating our own narratives. Because it's just really getting bad out here for us. So we got to do something, man.
Mariah, go ahead and give us your thoughts on this.
Initially, I was like, wow, this is happening again. Because this has been happening for so long, like for years. And it's just now bringing light to situations like this. And I was just shocked when I saw the video, and then I saw the other one when they were painting this picture, like he had an altercation with the police before he got shot. It's kind of like to make it okay to shoot him, but it's still not okay to shoot somebody 7 times in the back. And plus his kids were in the car. Like, they're always going to remember that for the rest of their life. Like, that's really traumatizing, and we don't know when all this is going to stop. Honestly.
Lawrence, you go ahead and you take the floor next, because I definitely want to get your reaction to all of this.
Well, I'll say that I personally haven't watched the video in its entirety yet, simply by the fact that I feel like I'm still traumatized from the other deaths, not even throughout time, like within this year. And so I haven't been able to bring myself to the point to where I can sit down and watch it. Because with the George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, I was able to watch those through, and I was even reposting them. But then after getting feedback from fellow peers and classmates saying, hey, if you're going to post this, can you put up a warning because, this is traumatizing or triggering for me. Now I've found myself in that position where it's like I'm clicking through somebody's Instagram story when I see that little sign come up, because I don't want to witness that again. Like you all are saying, we're seeing this every day. It's all over CNN. And really to sum it up, my feelings on it would just be like, when is enough enough? I know that's a slogan that we've heard a lot these past few days, but just like Doc Rivers said, it's just heartbreaking to live in a country that doesn't love you back, that looks at you as disposable, that if you're not rapping or entertaining or dribbling the basketball, your life doesn't matter. And so it's really painful to even see other people in the Black community. Just today, I saw a video on Twitter from a person named Christian Walker, I believe, who is basically coming up with excuses why the police officer was in the right for shooting Jacob Blake. So seeing people like that is just really just like, it brings down my spirits, because it's like, man, if all this is around us, I will say I haven't lost my faith, but it's sometimes I find myself sitting here like questioning, what is the end plan? Because if we're going through all this, I mean, like, man, what can get worse than this? You have shootings, you have racism still alive, you have unequal pay rights for black men and women, mostly women. And so it's just like, man, when is enough enough?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. You definitely made some great points there. And, I'll speak a little to what you said about not looking at the videos and just paying attention to some of the things that people have posted. Asha Gilbert is now joining us, Savannah State
I've been here the whole time, Xavier. I was like, all right, he just gonna forget about me, you know? It's all good.
I didn't know you were here, but shout out to you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Asha Gilbert is here once again. But getting back to Lawrence's point, here's what I'll say. I recently took a social media break from all of the things that we've had going on with COVID-19, the social injustices that are going on, and just some of the day-to-day foolishness and ridiculousness that we see people do on a day-to-day basis. And part of the reason why is because of things like this. Lawrence, you talk about the comments that you saw from Christian Walker. That's part of the reason of it. It's like, I'm getting to the point where I don't have the patience for this anymore. I'm getting to the point where I don't have the patience for the foolishness anymore, the stupidity anymore. So I have to find different ways to remove myself from it, from allowing it to consume me in any way whatsoever. So that's something that has definitely worked best for me. And I understand the people who haven't watched this video yet, because it's definitely traumatizing to watch. And I'll continue to say this. You're very grateful that Jacob Blake did not lose his life, but you are really hurt by the fact that he has been physically compromised and he has to live his life paralyzed, more than likely, for the remainder of his days on this earth because of a situation that did not have to happen. Asha, you go ahead and you take the floor on this next, and then we'll go to Randolph to close the thing out.
I think when I first saw it, the main reason why I actually watched it is because it was in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is where one of my cousins lived, and found out that Jacob Blake is like my second cousin removed, all the way down, like not a close relative or anything like that. But I think especially, and I work for the Savannah Morning News as a digital content producer. I also write from time to time too, if it's like breaking news or something trending. It feels isolating, especially, I don't know for you, Zay, but in my newsroom, I'm the only Black one. We just got a new editor now, who is African-American, but it just feels isolating because I feel like they can just go on about their day, where here I am about to burst into tears, especially after watching that 17-year-old boy with an AR-15 shoot somebody in the head and then walk with the police with his hands up and be able to walk like that. That traumatized me 10 times worse, in my personal opinion, to see that was allowed. You know what I'm saying? I've talked to other Black journalists here in Savannah, and I think a lot of it is just we're overwhelmed and we don't know the answer. It's like, I understand we have these issues, but what can I personally do? What can I do? You know what I'm saying? To make a change, to make that footprint, to change the narrative of what it is to be Black in America, in Savannah, in Florida, or wherever any of us are. You know, like what can I do? And it just becomes frustrating, overwhelming. Then becomes a lot.
No, I definitely understand where you're coming from. And I'll answer your question, but simply by saying this. So during the weekdays, I'm still working from home. I'm still working remotely for the most part. I'm back in the building of the newsroom on the weekends where I'm at in Sarasota, Florida, but nobody's talking about this. And that's the part that really bothers me the most about it. Nobody's talking about it. And in wake of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and all of this stuff was happening in those continuous months periods that it was happening, nobody really necessarily wanted to talk about it then, but it's like their hand got forced when all of the protesting and the rioting and everything started happening. And that's when you started seeing Blackout Tuesday happening. And, you know, initially the cause of that was people wanting to take a stand against all of the injustice that was happening, just saying, you know what, enough. No, we're only posting things on our social media today that have to do with voting, that have to do in support of Black Lives Matter, that have to do with getting justice for all of these individuals, in particular, unarmed Black men and women and children who have been killed by the police. But it felt like throughout the day as that was going on, that movement was getting hijacked. And, you know, you start seeing things like from people, I hear you, I see you, I'll never know exactly what this feels like, but we're with you. And then you start to see just people posting other things a few weeks to a month later, just in support of other things that Black Lives Matter was not necessarily supposed to be about, and totally going against the grain of what that post was supposed to be about on Blackout Tuesday back in June. So I definitely understand where you're coming from there with the newsroom factor and all of this. I can't say what exactly is going on in my newsroom right now because I'm not there on a day-to-day basis, but I've seen nobody really talking about this and posting anything about it unless it's something that they're scheduled to talk about in a newscast.
Right. Just real fast here, we're still working remotely as well, but I find myself spazzing. Like they had like a whole magazine come out with like essential people, and the African Americans that were featured was a nanny, a Parker's manager, like nobody was an owner of anything. And I spazzed. Like I was like, this is the narrative that you guys keep putting out. You guys say you want to be diverse and learn more, but you put out stuff like this. Like I've been heated. Like I'm like a hair trigger right now.
I definitely understand where you're coming from. And before Dolph, we're gonna go to Tevin, who's here with us first. He just let me know that he was here, so we're gonna touch on Tevin next. But I want to bring something up to your memory really quickly. If you remember this, in 2015, it was around October or November, and the mayor's election was going on. I can't remember her name at the moment right now, but she was going up against Eddie DeLoach, and it was 2015. Do you remember what her name was? She was the black.
Are you talking about Edna Jackson?
Yes, I am. I'm talking about Edna Jackson. And I know that different people in the Savannah area have had their different things that they say about Edna Jackson and some of the stances she takes and just how they feel about her. But one of the things that I felt was absolutely disrespectful to Edna Jackson as a black woman, and I'm not sure if you remember this or not, but if you see it, but maybe if I say it, you'll remember exactly what I'm talking about. There was a magazine cover that came out around Thanksgiving around that year that had a Caucasian family that was celebrating Thanksgiving dinner. And she was basically dressed as a maid or as a servant, serving them the food. That absolutely bothered me when I saw that. So I definitely understand what you're saying with these magazine covers and the things that you see in these magazines. It's a problem, and it's something that needs to be addressed. It's something that needs to be brought to a stop, honestly. But let's go to Tevin Tyler, rising photographer here in the media industry. Tevin's doing a great job up there in the Atlanta area, Savannah State graduate. He's a brother of mine as well. He's been on Xtreme Sports many times in the past. Tev, we definitely appreciate you joining us. What were your initial thoughts on the Jacob Blake shooting that took place in Kenosha, Wisconsin?
I don't want to too much talk about, pretty much the repetitiveness of what everybody's saying, because it is a traumatic experience nonetheless. But I would like to highlight a question and ask everyone, just in a rhetorical statement. This is the importance of why it's like imperative that we really learn to unify with each other. Because one thing about it is that within this world that we live in, Black is a target. And I hate to, sound like there's a vendetta against us or anything to that nature, that degree. But my issue is with our community is that I feel as if that too many people make too many excuses for things of trying to make change within themselves. Education is a very key part. And I feel as if that as we get more Black educators, it's sad to say when I was in the public school system, nobody could give a damn about, whether I was being taught the correct things about my culture, my history, my safety, my ancestors, and things like that. It was more so to collect a check. I hate it that it has to get to a point where, multiple of our people are dying, getting killed, getting shot. I was shot when I was in Savannah, March 17, 2017, on St. Patrick's Day, robbed at gunpoint, shot across my eyelid right here, and I was profiled as if that I was a suspect. So understand that I'm speaking through experience as well, but I hate when we keep trying to figure out what answers is, the things and stuff like that. I'm not saying that I want to find solutions, but my thing is that as a unified group, I get tired of walking down the street and you see another Black man over here criticizing another Black man, and this is the exact reason why we're getting shot and getting killed. I'm not saying I condone these things. I'm not saying it's acceptable whatsoever, but it's very frustrating. It's very baffling to understand that if we can't stand as a unified front all together, initially at the gate, how do you expect somebody else to respect us as if the minority race within America? But it's just one of those things where it's a tough pill to swallow. And like I said, I don't condone none of the things that have happened. And I'm not riding the fence for any police officer and things like that as far as the injustice towards our people. I certainly don't condone that, but I want our people to understand that we have to first bury all the hatchet, bury the hate, the stance that is going on now with the sports, it's a unified front, and that's what needs to be going on across our culture. Educate our youth, educate ourselves, and understand that within America, we do not have the privilege that these other, races do have, and we need to learn how to come together to, teach each other the things of which we need to do as a unified front to succeed and be not necessarily the superior race in America, but be the race that people do respect and understand that we're not ignorant and that we're not some hoodlums and thugs.
No, I definitely understand where you're coming from when you say that 100%. I mean, listen, we all have social media, so we see it all the time. We have people within our own community who get on social media and they beef with each other about very petty things that don't even matter. And like that's a form of division. And as you keep saying, like, we need to have more unity about everything in particular, not even just things like this. We need to just figure out how to unify better amongst each other. We have Ashia Manning in the building here, a Savannah State graduate, former editor of the Savannah State Tigers Roar. Yes, I'm shouting out the Savannah State Tigers Roar right now. We're definitely glad that Ashia could join us tonight. Ashia, how you doing?
I'm good, Xavier. How are you?
I'm good. Definitely glad you could join us tonight. What are your thoughts on just some of the things that you're hearing everybody say, and what was also your initial reaction to the Jacob Blake shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin?
So lately I've been trying to just kind of like protect my energy, because watching these videos over and over, we're kind of getting like secondhand trauma from them. So, I mean, to say the least, I'm traumatized. I mean, every video that we have to watch of another Black person getting murdered, it's pretty traumatizing. And I can say a lot of things and we could be here all night. I'm upset. I'm angry. I want to know what's next. I want to know, like, what it's going to take, for things to really change. And I missed a lot of what everyone was saying because I was kind of late. My bad, you guys. But
Good.
What Tevin was saying about, like, educating children is a start. But some policy changes need to happen, and I don't know how long that's going to take. And it's upsetting to me. So I've been trying to just keep my peace. Quarantine has been a lot on my mental. So I've been trying to just, stay sane. That's where I'm at.
No, I definitely feel you on that right there. I mean, because it is tough. We're tired of seeing this. We're tired of talking about it. We're tired of even having to be a possibility that we even have to think about in our minds. The fact that when we walk outside our doors, or even when we're in our homes for that matter, we're not safe. We don't ever know that 100%. I see Will's in the building, Will Broadbent, I believe. Will, can you go ahead and give us your thoughts on just some of the things that you're hearing here tonight, and just your initial reaction to the shooting that took place in Kenosha, Wisconsin?
Well, first and foremost, hey everybody, how you all doing? I am a little late, so I do apologize for that, me and Asia. But my reaction is just almost kind of like everyone else's. It's kind of getting redundant at this point. Having to look at, basically the same scenario over and over and over again, and just really just trying to figure out what's next. As far as the situation is concerned, I really don't really have too much to say, because at this point I'm just kind of fed up about it. So I'm not necessarily trying to block what's going on, but I'm just, like what Asia said, just trying to protect my energy and just trying to really just trying to find like some happy medium, just trying to find some positivity in what's going on, and not try to walk around being angry or feeling some form of like depression about it. But yeah, I'm kind of just in the wind with everything. I just don't really have too much really to say about the subject. Really, just been thinking a lot to myself and trying to figure out what ways I can do to kind of just protect myself and my family, and what can I do to, have more in-depth conversations with my younger siblings and what's going on in the world, and just trying to just stay positive, man. That's about it.
No, and I definitely understand where you're coming from right there, because I'll reiterate all of this, as I said earlier. watching that video and just having to hear about this again, it absolutely has had me traumatized. I'm hurt. I'm in pain for that family. And, you know, just seeing that this man has been physically compromised for the remainder of his life for something that didn't have to happen. I mean, what can you really say about that? But I want to move on to something a little bit of.
Hold on. Let me get into.
After Randolph says
I didn't
something,
do that
I would love to say something after Randolph. I would love to jump
Well,
in.
yeah. Well, really quick for me. I sum it up with one word. It's really disgust, because, you wake up, you know, every morning, and it's like something like, why another one? You know, why does this keep happening? Like, why can't these police officers like understand, you know, the ramifications of their actions? So for me, it's just like, what do we have to do as a community, you know, to get them to understand that they need to treat us with respect and treat us equally? So I mean, just, it's not really much more for me to say, because you guys really covered all those points. But, you know, my one word to sum that up is just disgust, you know, for me.
All right, before we move on to the next bullet point in regards to this, Eli, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things. I wonder, reach out to Tevin for really hitting the key point of a lot of things that I've been talking about recently. Community. Community organization is one of the biggest problems that we have in the African American community. Out of any other race, we tear each other down more than anything else. You know, we already sit there, as he said, target already on your back. You know, that's how life is. You know, growing up, you know, my mom always told me, you know, 3 things in life. You know, you already grow up, you know, with 2 strikes. One, you're black, and the second, you're an African American male. You know, you already grow up with 2 strikes. They're waiting to give you that 3rd strike. And, you know, that right there is the lifestyle of living as an African American, regardless of male or female. That's the life of living as African American. And I think that a majority of African Americans miss the point of what it's like to be a community, what it's like to be a family, because majority of our history is separation and bondage, right? Even in today's era, we're looking at separation between our own communities. No matter where you're at, people in African American communities will fight over which side of the street they live on. You know, that gang violence is a big thing in our community. You know, and it comes down to the point where, you know, someone else even said, you know, when is enough enough? I think that was Lawrence that had mentioned that. And to me, it starts off with family. You know, what is really a family? And as when we talk about family, we talk about the traditional family, a village. It takes a village to raise, you know, a kid, a child, not just your parents, not just your churches, but it takes the entire community. And I think we lack that community strength. And what I've seen over the last couple of months, starting off with Ahmaud Arbery, is that we've had a lot of strengthening within our own community, but it's starting to divide its way again. I'm starting to see a lot of African Americans arguing on the side of, well, he should not have, you know, resisted. And they're arguing back and forth with each other about resisting, when we should be arguing about the fact that someone was shot 7 times in their back and tased at the same time with 2 officers on one person who has, you know, children in the back seat. A child could have got killed off a ricochet bullet off of a car seat, right? And we're not talking about the main topic here. We're not talking about that this is another tally on the tally mark of an African American that was unarmed, that was killed by a police officer. We're not talking about that in the community. You know, at one point when everyone was marching, and, you know, I was sitting there and I went to a bunch of protests. I do a lot of community organizing. And throughout the entire process, I always thought, how long does this actually last? You know, we look at our older ancestors from the 50s and 60s and how long they boycotted versus how long we actually went to protest, right? And the protests died down, they settled down, and now we got another situation where someone else is being killed, and now the protests are gonna be on the rise again. And the sad part is, how long, once again, does this last with this community organization that we have? It's such a little portion, and it's not a lot of stuff that's gonna happen in the long run, because it's just a hot topic at the moment. African American lives that are being sacrificed at the hands of the United States is not a hot topic to talk about right now and then disappear. One thing that I did say, and I know once again this is an open discussion, so if I do offend someone, it's not my intention. But one thing I will say is that while we're talking about police brutality in America, and that's the biggest thing going on, what happened throughout the last couple of weeks to undermine police brutality? We started talking about pedophiles and other people like that to take away the hot topic of African Americans being killed at the hands of police officers. And that shift took other people to start focusing and posting everything else. And that right there showed me exactly how minuscule an African American's life is in this country. That we can shift the entire direction of what's been going on for centuries to talk about something else. Not saying it's not a big of a topic, because everything is a big topic, no matter whether it's child sex trafficking, whether it's police brutality, everything's a big topic. But for me, as African American, and especially African American male, I feel like it's a huge disrespect to our community to change the entire direction on so much progress that we had building up and the momentum we had built up, to just drop it off and then pick up something else to leave this behind until the next shooting happens. Because there will be another one, and there will be another one. And someone else mentioned policy changes, things need to happen. It's something I mentioned yesterday. Why is it that we have so many police departments out over here in the United States and we do not have that many African-American sheriffs? We do not have that many African-American police chiefs. You know, we do not have people of minority in general in a lot of these different police districts. We have a lot of people that are of, you know, Anglo-Saxon, want to say that because I don't really want to throw in the darn Caucasian term, but we have a lot of people that are not of color or anything like that running our communities, whether it be a Latino community, whether it be an African-American, Asian community, we have people that's not of us governing us. And I think that's the biggest issue, because me as a child growing up in the projects and all that, you know, Brooklyn, New York, and Harlem, New Jersey, the thing that I always hated was that we would have cops and other people that don't look like us coming into our communities and arresting people that look like me. But when I would have an African-American person come into my community, I got to drive home, even though I got caught at a 7-Eleven stealing something, I got to drive home from an African-American cop. But however, I would get a friend that would do the same thing, but it get arrested by somebody else that didn't look like us. Having people that govern our own communities that don't look like us is the biggest issue. It all started even with the voting situation, but also around with the entire criminal justice process, and when we had juries that were supposed to be of our peers but looked nothing like our peers. And at some point, there has to be a policy change within the police departments on the type of justice that is taken at the hands of a police officer. As I mentioned yesterday, there's no such thing as paid leave to sit at home when you know that you've got blood on your hands. I believe that while there is a thorough investigation going on, you are held and detained like a regular civilian would be when there's a thorough investigation going on. You get a lawyer and maybe you can go home. There's no such thing as you just go home and we'll just pay you to sit on your couch and let this thing blow by. So for me, that is a big issue. And I think that for policy standard, as well as community organization, we need to do a better job to not only inform ourselves, educate ourselves, not saying you need to go to the HBCU to learn your own history. You know, glad that I did go to Savannah State, got to learn a lot of stuff about my own culture. And that is not that's not the end point. You can go to HBCU and still leave without knowing anything. You know, the beginning is self-knowledge. How much do you learn on your own outside of leaving? And how much do you inspire someone else to learn? Knowledge is useless if you don't use it to spread. You know, who cares how much knowledge someone has? You can be an open book, but how much are you teaching to someone else that's going to teach to someone else? I believe that we start by teaching one another rather than trying to teach other people who don't really understand to begin with. We need to teach each other first and then move forward. And that's kind of where I want to go with later on with what's next for me. But I really wanted to talk on what Tevin had to say, because that was a very good point that he made, was community organization, because I'm really big on that. And I appreciate you guys for giving me that time for that, speak on that.
Of course, most definitely. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add to what Eli just said before we move on to the next bullet point? All right, so we're gonna move on to the next bullet point, and that is how this Kenosha, Wisconsin shooting became even more of a national story yesterday than it already was, when we saw the NBA and the WNBA boycott their games yesterday. This started with the Milwaukee Bucks boycotting Game 5 of their playoff series against the Orlando Magic yesterday. And This actually happened right as the game was preparing to tip off. This is when we first caught wind of the Milwaukee Bucks they're not coming out of their locker room. And the Orlando Magic, they actually did not know that the Milwaukee Bucks were planning to do this. So we don't know if they already had this pre-planned and they were holding on to it or not. But once the Orlando Magic caught wind of this going on, they were just like, oh, since they're not playing, we're not playing either. And that immediately put the pressure on the other teams that were left to play or set to play on that day yesterday. The Houston Rockets and the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the last game that was scheduled for that evening, the Portland Trail Blazers and the Los Angeles Lakers to do the same exact thing. And considering some of the players who are on all four of those teams I just mentioned, we all pretty much know, for those of us that watch the game and we know where some of these athletes stand on this, we pretty much knew, all right, it's only a matter of time before we hear that these games are going to be boycotted too. We only knew that for a fact. So anybody have any thoughts that they'd like to say about just what the Milwaukee Bucks did on yesterday and how that led to a domino effect of all of the other NBA teams that were scheduled to play in the bubble on yesterday and also today, and what they did yesterday? Because before anybody says anything, this thing actually started with the Boston Celtics and the Toronto Raptors about 24 to 36 hours before the Milwaukee Bucks did what they did on yesterday, talking about boycotting Game 1 out of protest for the Jacob Blake shooting that took place. So once the Bucks didn't play yesterday and once all the games were postponed and boycotted yesterday, we pretty much knew they're not playing today either. So anybody have any initial thoughts they'd like to say on any of this?
I would like to go first on this one.
Go ahead.
First, if we're speaking like solely about the Milwaukee Bucks, I am not against what they did at all. I just want that to be on the record. But I feel the discomfort from other players when the reports came out that they just chose to do that on their own. I feel like when you're making a movement such as this, you should move as one and not, oh, we're going to do this on our own. And then, like you said, Xavier, then that puts pressure on other teams to, well, if we don't do what they did, people are going to look at us like we don't care. So I feel like the Milwaukee Bucks should have done a better job of communicating that, if not throughout the rest of the teams, at least call the Players Association. At least call like Chris Paul, somebody who's in that position so the message can be relayed down instead of having it set up to where it's just like, man, we just gonna go out here and do this. Because then it looks like you're acting on your own. And the second part, what I was really disturbed about and feel strongly about is, where has Giannis been in all of these talks? He has not said a word or mentioned anything. I saw him standing in the back while Sterling Brown and George Hill were speaking. But my man, if you are, quote unquote, the new face of the league, you are up for Defensive Player of the Year. You've won Defensive Player of the Year. You're trying to win a second MVP. You're trying to win a championship. If you believe in these causes, why have you not said a word? If it was any other Instagram video he makes with his girlfriend or his fiance, he won't back down. Or even as we saw with Jan Vesley in the bubble, he won't hesitate to headbutt him. But when it comes to a cause that clearly you must have been on board with, given I would expect that Giannis to be the captain of the Milwaukee Bucks, as the Milwaukee Bucks set out, that he didn't feel the need to even speak up is something that I just can't wrap my head around, because we heard that LeBron spoke. We saw Chris Paul getting involved. We even saw things like Udonis Haslem, George Hill. We saw from a variety of other players, even Jaylen Brown. We saw all this stuff. So why is it that Giannis isn't talking? Why is it that Kawhi isn't talking? Why is it when we needed superstars the most, they don't want to mess up their image, quote unquote?
No, I definitely agree with you.
I'm about to say, real quick, let me piggyback, X, real quick.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I agree with what Lawrence said about Giannis. Like, I didn't want to see Sterling Brown giving me no message. I'm gonna be real with you. He like the 8th man off the bench. Nobody really knows who Sterling Brown is. Just being all the way a buck. And people barely know who George Hill is. If Giannis, who is probably the number one global basketball player right now, just globally, because he's from Greece. if he was to stand up there and they had a written statement, if he was just up there to read the statement, I feel like that would have got more impact on what we're trying to get across than having two people who kind of are known but not really known. I just really wanted to piggyback on what Lawrence was saying though.
No. I feel you on that 100%. But here's what I'll say about the Sterling Brown point. I'm not sure that everybody knows about it. So around January of 2019, he actually had a civil situation that was going on involving him and the police in Milwaukee at the time too. So it did make sense to hear from him in some type of capacity. But here's what I will say about the Giannis point that you guys are making and why I absolutely agree with that. Before we learned yesterday that George Hill and Sterling Brown were leading the charge on this, who was all the praise going to for this yesterday? It was all going to Giannis. The media was giving all the praise to Giannis. They were saying, oh, Giannis, man, this is what a two-time MVP looks like off the floor, taking the charge for issues like this. And him sitting in the back yesterday, I actually didn't even know he was there for that press conference that they had yesterday until I saw the video from another angle. Because the first time I saw the video, the camera angle was really zoomed in on George Hill and Sterling Brown. And I'm looking around for Giannis. I'm like, is Giannis even here for this? And at first I thought he was somebody else who was standing in the back, but that may have been another player. But when I did see him sitting there, I was like, okay, at least he was there for it. But for him to not be able to say a word about it, that just struck me the wrong way. Anybody else have anything they'd like to chime in on this one? Would any of the ladies like to go next on this one?
If none of them do, I will.
Okay. All right, go ahead. All right, Tev, it's on you.
So I want to piggyback off what you fellas, stuff like that. Once you look at it from a different perspective outside of just, what we would like our people to do, it's more so like the slave and slave owner mindset. Everyone already knows that the NBA and the NFL is nothing but a modern day Tom and Coon show that they put on for us. It's not just for black people, but it's more so for society. We pay big bucks to watch these people play, and that the fact of the matter is they're just very high priced, high priced material. That's all I like to call it. The thing I think about when it comes down to Giannis and those guys speaking out is that it's a couple things you got to think about. One, you're basically entitled, or you're pretty much attached to somebody who pays your salary. I think a lot of these guys don't really know how to speak out on certain things because their whole mindset, their whole life has been pick up a ball, put it in the basket. When I think about Giannis from being, deported over to the United States and stuff like that, and the turmoil that he had to deal with within his family, this young man himself, I'm not saying that he doesn't have the will to speak up and things like that, but his whole life he had to play the backseat role just because of what the government and things like that had to play on into him and things like that. It's more than things too where you're trapped behind big brands. So people like LeBron, he kind of helped elevate Nike in a sense to the stature of where it is now to upper echelon. Athletes and things to that nature. He's built a platform for himself, and we know this is to come from LeBron. But as well, from that as well, we have to understand that, as much as we would like these guys to make a stance, they're more so afraid of the fact of losing the money to provide for them families. I don't condone and feel like it's right. I'm not saying that it is okay, but I'm just saying at the end of the day, we can't put expectations on these guys when the pressure is being put on them to be like, hey, you're the face of my franchise. If you want to continue to make $100 million a year, I advise you not to speak up and say nothing. It's not all right. It's not okay. But let's even highlight the fact of if this is a continuing problem for our athletes and things like that we want from them, why not let's get some of these old NBA guys, old NBA execs, why not start the own league yourself? Why not make a stance for yourself and continue to make the same things over and over? Like we keep talking about the same thing, and I want to just say we keep expecting and asking things of our people that are trapped behind these others. I'm not going to say who the people are, but others. The thing is that, I hate the fact that we're sitting here talking about the fact of that we're like, well, why Giannis didn't speak up instead of Sterling? The fact of the matter is, when I was talking earlier, it's a unified front. I can give two fucks about if Sterling Brown spoke or Giannis spoke. The fact of the matter is that's my brother. Sterling Brown is my brother in this fight that we in together. At the end of the day, whatever we want from these people, I'm just content and happy with the fact that we were able to get something out of anything. If Sterling Brown spoke up or the Bucks spoke up, did whatever they did, whatever the case may be, the domino effect at the end of the day was the whole NBA boycotted. the MLB boycotted. You know what I'm saying? Like the NFL took a stance of leaving practice and stuff like that. The fact of the matter is, I understand we want to communicate with our whole league, but the fact is, if we're going to make a stance, if you're really about these words that you speak of, and these athletes are really behind, you know, the stuff that they're saying with injustice and things like that, if Giannis and the Bucks said, guess what? We ain't showing up. At that point, I'm on the phone like, Ron, you seen the Bucks over here, they not showing up, what we doing? Hey, I'm with the same movement. I'm not gonna speak bad about my brother. However he did the things that how he did, that's what he did. But I'm gonna follow suit because I stand behind the cause strongly. We'll deal with the repercussions behind closed doors with our own people. But I would not allow any media, any other people to speak about our people and how we went about the stands. The fact of the matter is, we stood as a unified front. We made a statement, and now I think it's not necessarily that we are being hurt, but I think that they understand that right now, at this point that we are in life, these guys are not willing to deal with the bullshit no much longer. We're not going to continue to keep taking that. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. So shout out to the Bucks, shout out to the NBA, shout out to all sports, period. I'm just glad that they were able to finally stand together in a unified front and make something actually shake.
Yeah.
Hey, hold on. I think everybody got to say something on this.
Yeah. real quick.
Go ahead, Eli.
Real quick.
All right. Go ahead. Hey, look, I'm gonna let Lauren speak real quick, and then I'm gonna hop on. Go ahead, Lauren.
I was just gonna say, like, Tevin, I agree with everything you saying, but the reason why I had to say Giannis's name, because it'd be like, if you and Barack Obama are both in the park talking to people would be more inclined to listen to Barack and go with Barack just because of the path of where he's gone. Now, I agree. It shouldn't be that way. We should be able to look just like if a homeless man asks for something. If anybody has someone on the street, you should be pulling over to help him because that's your brother. But that's not the society we live in. And although, yes, they do, quote unquote, work for bigger corporations, we have seen certain people take that leap. Kyrie Irving, Maya Moore, and so on and so on. Be like, bro, regardless if they pay my salary or not, this is wrong. And I can't help that X player doesn't have the financial literacy once he made it to the league. And he can't afford that. That's not my issue. He should have looked into those issues once he came to that money. But what I can do is hold my leaders responsible in my community. Because if not me, then who? And if not us, just how we're having this talk right now, there's no way you can convince me that us being on this talk are coming up with ideas right now or expressing ourselves in ways that grown men in the NBA or NHL or wherever throughout the country have never thought of before. You can't tell me no one else has ever thought of, man, we should make our own league and forget the NBA with them white owners. It's not my fault that they chose to stay in the game and make money because that's what's doing it. But if you're going to do that, you have to take on responsibility. Just like Spider-Man, if you have all that power, comes great responsibility. You just can't have all the power, be the two-time MVP and all this stuff and be like, man, when it comes to social justice or anything else, I'm going to sit that one out. I need to hear from you, bro. Even if it's, I stand with my brother Sterling Brown. That's all I need to hear from you. But the fact that he didn't say anything, it's what rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, so good point on one thing that Lauren said. I'm not going to say I agree with you totally. One thing that you did say was, to hear something from Giannis, just anything, whether it be like, I stand behind it, I support what they just said, just to show that the community itself is strong. Like, hey, wasn't me. I don't feel comfortable, speaking on this issue right now. I'm still, dwelling on it, whatever it is, this person has in your personal life. You don't always have to stand up. And I'm gonna make sure that's clear. You don't always have to be that guy that is the front runner saying, you know what, I'm the captain of the team. I'm gonna speak up. I'm gonna go off what Tevin said. Long as somebody said it, I'm happy. But to at least hear the support from someone that is a team, team captain, a leader of that team would also have been important for me as well. But at the end of the day, someone said it, and it's kind of a conversation we had yesterday leading into this. I said we're boycotting, and I kind of called it into fruition with today. I said they're going to go ahead and boycott, and then Xavier said we might even end up boycotting the rest of this darn playoff series. And I said that going into the rest of this season, I think that they might have to cancel the rest of the playoffs. Why? Because I honestly think that high-end players like LeBron James is serious in what he says. He's not going to sit here and play the rest of these games until real action is taken. And I think we're turning into the tide where the players have so much power nowadays compared to when Kaepernick was taken out of the league. Players have stood up so much more and that owners and everyone in the organization are realizing, as Tevin said, yes, this is like modern day slavery. You're getting bidded at the highest price to get picked on somebody's team, right? However, without that talent like LeBron or Giannis and all those people not playing, there is no money coming to the games. People aren't going to watch, you know,
Okay.
seventh or eighth man on the team. They're going to watch these high-end players, right? And when someone like LeBron James says, this isn't postponed, this is a boycott, I love the fact that he said something like that, because boycotting, even with the entire, civil rights and then, using with the bus systems and all that in the third, those boycotts lasted a very, very long time. There's no such thing as we're going to postpone the season. It's postponed till when? The players at this moment in time determine how long this season is prolonged. I honestly think that, as I said yesterday, the commissioner is going to have to make a decision where he's going to have to cancel the rest of this season. And the reason why is because the more and more that nothing is done from the head owners and the top of the organization, the more these players are not going to feel comfortable and secure in their roles of playing within these teams. You're going to have those players that need this job for financial security and all that in the third. They grew and hustled their way up into playing basketball. Yes, that's one way of income. I said there's going to be something they're going to have to do. Owners are going to either have to, the commissioner going to either have to cancel the season, or they're going to have to prorate the salaries of these high-end players that's not playing because of the fact that, they're standing up for something. But that's going to be a negative reaction on the league. I honestly think that what's going on now, I'm happy that somebody, no matter who they are on that roster, is speaking about it and it's hitting worldwide. It's not just the NBA. It's not just the WNBA. MLB, when I seen that hit the headline, I was like, it's a huge domino effect. As Tevin said, it only takes is one person. And sadly, I said, Kaepernick had to be the fall guy to start what is happening into fruition right now. There's always someone who has to take the fall. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X had to take the fall for what we are dealing with today, the fact that we can be integrated, but yet we're still so separated in our own community. And the fact that we're going back and forth and arguing with each other about simple things like who said it and who didn't say it. At the end of the day, someone in the African-American community said something that plays in this organization, and since someone said it, they're going to highlight it. Somebody, I forgot what's the player's name, but I believe it was on the Orlando Magic, said something about, Black Lives Matter, and he said something on the opposite side of what everyone was talking about. He ended up tearing his knee. But at the end of the day,
he didn't kneel.
That is the sentiment that I'm talking about. Either you're for it or you're against it. There is no in-between line, and I think that the time for dancing in the middle is over. It needs to be one big shift. I don't really care much about a player-by-player basis at this moment. At this moment, I'm thinking bigger than just player-by-player. The commissioner, Adam Silver, needs to do something about what's going on. And his job is to determine whether or not the players are more important or is the game of basketball more important. And if he doesn't make the right decision, trust me, they're going to lose so much more money than they have been losing already since this entire pandemic. And I think LeBron James will be the front runner of all this, because if he doesn't play, the NBA doesn't get paid. That's how I see it.
Okay, and before somebody else
want
to talk about this, I want to bring up one point really quickly because Eli brought this up. We are going to continue on this point, but I'd like to bring in some further context and information to all of this. So on Wednesday night, the NBA players down in the bubble in Orlando, they held a players meeting, and we were told just by reports from guys like Adrian Wojnarowski and other NBA insiders who were down there in that bubble that this was a very tense, it was a very uncomfortable meeting, and it ended in an ugly fashion. And as a matter of fact, around 11:30 p.m. last night, we started getting notifications that the Clippers and the Lakers had initially voted to boycott the remainder of the season, being led by LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard and their teams leaving the room. Now, on Thursday, there was another meeting had between the players, and they ultimately decided to resume the 2020 NBA playoffs. As I said earlier, all games are postponed for today, but teams will continue gameplay at some point. I don't believe they'll play again tomorrow. I believe the earliest they may play again is Saturday. But with all of this being said, they're resuming the season for now. If this type of incident happens again, what happens? Because if they boycott again, they're not going to continue with the season. Because honestly, when I woke up this morning, I really thought I was going to wake up to notifications of Breaking news, the 2020 NBA playoffs have officially been canceled. The players have voted not to play. That's what I thought I was going to wake up to this morning. I just wanted to provide further context in there for everybody there. And someone also mentioned something earlier about the different sports leagues, the other different sports leagues that didn't play. I'll bring that up into play right now. We saw 3 MLB games that were postponed on yesterday. 7 were postponed today. Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, she boycotted the semifinals of her tennis match in support of Black Lives Matter and the Jacob Blake shooting incident that happened. Now, we learned earlier today that she is going to continue gameplay tomorrow. 9 NFL teams canceled their practices today. And the New Orleans Saints, they did practice, but they wore Jacob Blake across their helmets today, as opposed to their regular names that they would wear across their helmets for practice. So with all of that being said, I do want to get you guys to continue to respond to the NBA's and the WNBA's point to all of this. But I'd also like to now add in, what are your thoughts on how the players in all of the different leagues have responded to the Jacob Blake shooting?
I want to chime in on that. If whoever's going to go first, I'll let y'all go first.
Yeah, real quick, I'm gonna talk about the Bucks real quick. For me, I think that was a great move that they made, and necessarily I don't think they put the pressure on the other teams to not play as well, because I feel like with them stepping out and doing that, all the other teams were in one accord already. Okay, they're boycotting the games, we're not playing as well. And really the message I got from them doing that was they're saying we're going to put the pressure on the owners. You know, we want y'all, the owners who have the cachet and the political expertise to make something happen, like really start this change. Because one of the biggest questions they had going into the bubble was how could they play and, you know, still, you know, seek justice while in the bubble. And the Bucks coming out and doing that was them saying, hold on, you know, this movement is losing momentum. So we need to do something, and this is one way we can do it. You can go ahead, Will.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that in response to all the other sports organizations that have responded to it, I was just going to say that it's cool that people are canceling practices, and you got guys like Kenny from TNT, you know, he walked off the set and stuff like that, and that's all fine and dandy and stuff like that, but where's going to be the consistency after that is over with? Because it seems since all this has started, it's just like, we'll do this, you know, they'll sit out, you know, or say that they're not going to play. But it's just like, when are they going to just say, you know, enough is enough? We're not going to play at all, instead of just teetering with it. Like, there's just like this teeter. And I get it. People got families that they have to feed at the end of the day. They do have contracts that they have to abide by, unfortunately, that they signed. So they do have, you know, they have a responsibility to their organization to do what they need to do. But at the same time, I just feel that it's gonna take a lot more than just saying, oh, we're just gonna postpone, you know, this game here, this game there, that game there. And I believe that by doing that, it's taken away from the real conversations that need to be had, such as these right here, because I firmly believe that sports should have never returned to begin with. I don't believe that they did any extensive research to make sure that people were really and truly safe. As far as the guidelines are concerned, as far as, you know, playing sports, there's no way to social distance in football or basketball whatsoever. So none of that stuff even made sense to me at all. And to me, it just seems we're just in a conundrum. It just seems like there's a group of people that want to go one way, and there's a group of people that want to go another way, instead of everybody just saying, okay, this is going to be the plan. This is the direction that we're going to go to, and we're going to stick with it. I don't think that those conversations are being, I think they're being had, but I don't think that they're being had to the degree in which everyone is completely on board and what needs to be done. So until we get to the point of where there's that conversation of we have a legit plan, because the problem is we don't have a plan. We keep talking about, you know, what we're going to do, but nobody's saying how we're going to implement it. So until we talk about how we're going to implement the plan, I don't think that, you know, people saying that we're going to sit out the rest of the playoffs. So we're not going to play these games is going to do any good until there's a plan, a true plan implemented to bring about real change. That's all I want to say on that.
Real quick to respond to that, I think, you know, the report saying that the NBA is supposed to return, I think for it to return, like the players have to see some sort of plan of action from the owners. And that's the only way that the season will actually resume. If they don't see a plan of action from the owners, they're just going to say, you know what, forget this. We're done. We're not playing.
And before anybody else chimes in on this, I'd like Taylor Roberts to hit on this thing really quickly. He can't stay with us long, but I know he had some things that he wanted to say. T-Rob, what's up, my brother? As always, it's good to see you. Glad to see you in the building with us tonight. What are your thoughts on the athletes and the players in the different sports leagues that they protested and they boycotted yesterday in response to the shooting that happened with Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin? What are your thoughts? Go ahead and cook on this.
Well, in regards to the NBA players, I mean, I just feel like it's too much responsibility that we putting on these athletes. They play sports for a living, right? And I'm not saying they're not capable of like taking on. Me personally, I don't put that on them to have to, you know what I'm saying, like call for a strike or anything like that. Because these guys, they have families that they got to take care of. They got kids. They employ a lot of people. They send a lot of their, you know, siblings, cousins to school. They got to take care of their parents. So they doing a lot for like hundreds, if not thousands, of Black people that they know and they care about. So I feel like it's a lot to be asking of them to strike out and end up losing paychecks. And I feel like it's just a bad look, you know, for them to be on the fence about it, you know. But like I said, they're under a lot of pressure in order, you know, to do something, to say something. And I feel like people are thinking like, well, if they just strike, then that'll put pressure on the owners, right? Since they are billionaires, they got connections with politicians and other people in power that maybe they'll do something. But I mean, that's not a very well thought out plan. You know what I'm saying? These owners aren't as dependent on NBA money as the players are. They got corporations and companies that got nothing to do with basketball that they get most of their money from. I think the only owner that I know about in the NBA that's dependent on any basketball money is the Lakers owner. You know, the Buzz family and all of that. The rest of them, I'm pretty sure they got money outside of basketball. So they still wouldn't be inclined to come with the players with some type of plan of action. You know, just me personally, I don't think that's just realistic to, I guess it would sound pessimistic, but I don't look for, I guess, white people to, especially in that class, to try to do something to help. It's really not their responsibility to do anything. I'm just being honest. I don't feel like it's their job to do that. They don't have to. You know, we would have to come with a plan like the gentleman said before me. We got to come up with our own plan, something that we can institute and try to use leverage to broke power against the people who can make those decisions. So it's going to be up to us. The athletes can only help, but they shouldn't be at the forefront of this movement because they're pretty much compromised to a certain degree. You know, they got corporate sponsors that they got to uphold. You know, they can't say too much or they can't do too much. So I feel like they shouldn't be at the forefront of this movement, in my opinion.
And I'm hopping there with you real quick because it all goes back to what I was talking about when I was talking about education. You got to think about these athletes in the perspective of how they got to the league, getting pushed through, being pacified. You know, they always have been put on a pedestal to entertain people, which is put a ball in a goal, which is what I initially said from the start. You know, like Lauren said, you know what I'm saying? Definitely agree with you as far as like if it was me and Obama speaking. Of course, the world going to talk to Obama, but look at the senses of that relationship. Obama is a political figure within our world. You understand what I'm saying? As far as these athletes go, their only job was to really just satisfy these audience and I guess you would say inspire another kid to be another athlete. You understand what I'm saying? I don't say that they don't have the opportunity and the chances of, like I said, you know, speaking up and being greater than what they are. But y'all got to understand as well, it's just as anybody else in this world, we are young, educated brothers that had to grind and get our degrees and get the education that we had to get out of the mud. Nobody was pacifying us necessarily to say just to get through, just because of we're going to bring $600,000 to the University of UGA just to have, what's his name? The guy that's going to get drafted from UGA now. I can't think of his name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. You know, they're pushing these guys through because it makes them money for their programs. They're pushing these guys through just to make sure that they can keep bringing in money to those guys. So from the standpoint, you got to understand, we are the ones that are feeling the impact the most, for the simple fact that we don't got generational wealth. We don't have that old money that's creating new money. We don't have that family that grew up over here with 100 acres of land, and we understand taxes, and we understand, you know what I'm saying, all these different things that comes down to being pretty much being somebody of wealth. You understand what I'm saying? We look at things from a different perspective. Now, I'm not condoning, or I'm not saying that the things that these guys are doing, as far as like owners and stuff like that, is okay. But the fact of the matter is, if the whole NBA does boycott, nobody gets paid. I guarantee you for a fact, all that old money is going to turn into more new money. And all the NBA players, as much as that, you know, they're going to be like, well, you know, we need to do this. These boys can give two damns about what happens as far as if we don't get paid. If they don't get paid, all they know is a football, all they know is a basketball, all they know is a baseball, all they know is a hockey puck. We try to get athletes all the time to understand the importance of saving money, investing money, understanding how to make more money outside of the league and stuff like that. These boys don't give a damn about nothing, or they don't understand the aspects of life, because of the simple fact that our own people, it started back from when they was in of adolescence in grade school, from second grade and third grade. I just keep pushing these guys through. Oh, he's gonna be a 5-star recruit. We're gonna get him pushed through. He's gonna bring us so much money to the booster club. Oh, let's get him going here and get him through. Let's make sure we give his father a $20,000 check just so he can sign with us to come to our school. Them boys don't go to class. Them boys don't learn this stuff. Them boys only know what they know how to do. So now we get to this point where you're making millions of dollars, and we looking at these athletes with like, damn, dog, you made it. So help us, you know what I'm saying, get to the standpoint of where we're a respected race. They help us get to that standpoint of you know what I'm saying, people actually understanding and care about us as feelings. They don't know how to do it because they never had to. They just know how to, let me sit right here and pose for the picture for the yearbook or something like that. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it just goes beyond a lot of things. Like I said, I'm not gonna sit up here and like I said, I'm not like that, but I'm not gonna sit up here and give them expectations that I know for a fact they need to talk. I just want to say education that be instilled in them. They need to learn how to do these things, and we need to teach them how to do it versus expecting them to know how to do it just because you get paid $1,000,000. That's all I'm saying.
Right, definitely some great points that you both definitely made right there. Would anybody else like to go next and speak on this point?
I'm gonna say something.
I let Mariah.
All right. So I'm not the biggest sports fan. I know a little bit about basketball, but what Tevin was saying, I completely agree. I was just having this conversation earlier with my dad, and he was trying to understand like why they're boycotting and how long it's gonna last and everything. And it's basically the bigger picture, because even though they have families and they're really dependent on that money since they made it to the league, just us as a culture, we never were taught like to save this much money and to give it to the next generation that's coming up, just to build up own money like other cultures have had. Like, we just weren't learned to have that. And I don't know, I guess that's just what we have to learn coming up, since we're basically the next generation. We just have to learn how to stack up our money and have it grow so we can have these acres of land and have all this that these other cultures have. Because again, we just weren't learned that as a culture. And specifically when in our culture, when we had people just get like just a little bit of money, they just spend it, because we never had anything to begin with. So of course when we get like thousands of dollars. The first thing that we're gonna think of, oh, let me get this big house. Let me help my mom get this house or this car. Like, we're not thinking just, oh, let me save up so my children can have this or whatever. We just need to come together as a unity.
I kind of want to speak on exactly what she said. You know, very good point on there, especially piggybacking off of Tevin, what he said. You know, when we're growing up, especially the African American community, we're taught a couple of things on how to make a change in our society and just a change in our own life. I don't know everyone's background and how they grew up, but I'm pretty sure I can tell you that everyone grew up as an African American. So I can pretty much tell you some things that we all experienced. But one thing I know, that growing up as an African American, you're not given the same opportunity to financial freedom. You know, you grow up not having the same amount of land and, you know, just living on that type of wealth. The land is the biggest portion of wealth, you know, regardless of who you are, where you are. If you have land, you are wealthy. Whether it's something that, you know, small or big, if you physically own some land, I don't care if you got an RV on it, you own that land, you can sell that land for money, big money. So one thing that we lack in the African American community is that land, because we're not taught how to acquire land. And the same thing for these professional athletes. You know, they're taught when they're young, as Tevin said, you play this sport, whether it be basketball, football, you are playing this sport or you're rapping, because those are the ways that you can get out of this situation that you're in. That's how you can feed your family, right? So you're feeding your family, but you don't know how to really feed your family. You know, I say the same thing when people are going to the gym, for an example. You know, you can be in the gym, but a lot of people aren't actually in the gym. You know, same thing with church. You can be at church, but are you really in church? So when it comes down to it, a lot of these athletes, they think that giving money to people and communities and stuff like that is actually, you know, helping the communities. I enjoy what LeBron James done with the I Promise School. Sure, you know, it's a tax write-off and all that in the third, and that's all people want to exemplify in the news, is that he didn't really pay for all this in the third, right? To me, you know, he's doing something that's greater than majority of any athlete has ever done before, is giving the opportunity for these kids to go to college for free if they pass through this I Promise School, right? And a lot of these kids are not afforded the proper education. As Tevin was mentioning earlier, is that me from personal experience, when I was growing up and came from Hackensack, New Jersey, and I moved down here to Georgia, I understood that in Jersey, a 65 was a D, but in Georgia, a 65, you failed your class. And coming from that situation, I realized that it was a lot harder for me to pass exams here in Georgia than it was to pass in Jersey, based on that I went to a 7A school, and that 7A school system was a lot different than what the school system I had in Jersey, having gone from a predominantly African-American community to a predominantly white institution in high school. And knowing the difference of that I knew that resources were not provided the same that it was at that school. And a lot of these athletes today come from those same similar backgrounds, where they have to grind it out day in and day out, and they get to the league. And we created a players association. We have advisors around them, circling around them, saying, hey, invest in this, do that. That's great and all. But at the end of the day, these people know one thing and one thing only. They know how to hustle and they know how to grind. There's no such thing as about how to actually reinvest and redistribute that wealth back into your own community that's going to help in the long run. There's, you know, the word generational wealth is getting pushed around so much that everyone needs to create generational wealth, but nothing's really being taught on where does it start to actually create that generational wealth. You know, a lot of people understand that, yes, generational wealth is important. You'll have a family that has owned one big strip of land for over a century, 2 centuries, and all they've done is just put more and more property on top of that land. You know, investing into your future is one thing, but investing really holistically into how to make that happen with your generational wealth is a totally different thing. You know, going to school and educating yourself on that is one big thing, but what do you do with that education outside of just your regular job? A lot of us go to school, either, you know, some people in here, journalism, photography, and, you know, me, political science and stuff like that. But what are you doing with your actual education that you learned that's going to benefit not only your future family, but also your brothers and sisters that may not have that same type of education or be afforded the same opportunity that you were afforded? All we know is go to school, collect debt, pay that debt off, and then die. And then when we die, we pass on that debt to the next family member who has to go to school, collect debt, and then pay that debt off and then die. So a lot of these athletes are going through that same process where they'll buy all these mansions, buy all these yachts, and at the end of the day, when they die, they got a big mansion that their young child who's not going to the league has to pay all that debt, all that insurance, that tax on all that, and all that stuff gets foreclosed and sold back off to a rich person who actually can't afford it. And now that family has lost that wealth and that generation has died. So I think that you made a great point that, you know, it starts with learning how to make that generational wealth and learning how to create it and funnel it down to the further generations. And Tevin did a very good job expressing that we cannot, as a community, expect other people to do the work for us. We can no longer depend on just owners. We can't just sit here and say, owners are obliged to help us as players. You know, Randolph and Xavier made a very good point as well, saying that yes, the owners they have to make a stand, but at the end of the day, they're not going to make the stance, as Tevin said, because they have money, and Lawrence mentioned as well, you know, money redistributed into other places. Same thing Taylor said. The money is something that they have, and the players is just a small portion of their portfolio. The league is just a small portion of the type of income that they have coming in. If players decide not to play, guess what? An owner can resign and just they'll take their money elsewhere. That's how life works when you actually have wealth. There's no such thing as, oh, okay, I lost this bit of money here, I'm going to die off without having some type of money. No, they have money. And whether the players boycott or whether the players decide, you know, we're just not going to play at all, we're all going to quit, that's fine and dandy. There's always going to be that next kid that's grinding from the projects or grinding from the streets that this is their only way out. There's always going to be another LeBron James, believe it or not. May not be in 50 years, maybe in 100 years. There's always going to be another LeBron. There's always going to be another Giannis. You know, there's always going to be that other kid who has to make it from the bottom. And that's all I'm saying on that. I don't want to go any further on that.
All right, definitely some great points that were addressed there. Would anybody else like to touch on this point?
I just to add, I mean, kind of like grouping all those points together, like the basis of all of that is just community and love. Like, I think because we're so divided, like inside of ourselves, I think that's what's leading to like us not making much progress, you know? And I don't want to take away from the progress that has been made. Like he was talking about LeBron James opening up the school, but that's one out of how many, you know, players out here with millions of dollars, or these, and to take it further than that, entertainment artists as well. You know, like oftentimes they feel like they don't have a responsibility to the community collectively, but when we are all here and we're poor, frankly, you know, we don't have the resources. And so when you look at our plight as African Americans, everyone has a responsibility to the plight, whether it's, you know, resources or foot action during the protest or teaching, you know, children in these schools, whatever your role is, we all have a role. And if we loved each other like we really were supposed to, but of course that goes back to slavery, like trauma and all that being passed down through the bloodlines, like that's a whole nother conversation. But if we really learn to love each other, learn to love ourselves, and learn to respect and uplift the community, I think that that's when we'll actually see the change. It won't just be, oh, this money, or oh, this boycott, or whatever, you know, we want to see happen. The change will only happen when we really learn to love ourselves.
So I'm gonna move it further. I'm gonna look. Well, we actually have another guest who just joined us in the building. My NABJ brother Devon Ashby is in the building. Dev, what's good, bro? It's good to see you in here.
What's happening?
Would you like to touch really quickly on the point of just the response that we've seen from the players and the athletes throughout the different leagues, and just the response of boycotting and postponing games and protest of the shooting of Jacob Blake that occurred in Kenosha, Wisconsin?
So I guess my thoughts were that, for one, Kyrie Irving was definitely right, and that he had been with this from the beginning. And, you know, a lot of talking heads kind of aired him out for it, but he flat out, I feel like they deserve some type of like, I'm sorry, I was wrong, whatever. But beyond that though, this is different. Like, it's something I feel like it's a long time coming. Even though with the NBA, the fact that it only lasted basically less than 24 hours was a little bit confusing. But like, I support them. I'm here for it, and it's a nice change up because I wasn't really feeling the putting it on the Black Lives Matter on the floor and the nice clean T-shirts and phrases and stuff. You know, like it seemed a little too corporate for me. So it was like, this was different. It was cool to see them change it up, and you just wonder what's going to come from it, like just from all the different sports, you know. So, and then the other thing is that the WNBA has been on top of this for a while, and they deserve their flowers.
Yes, they definitely do. A huge shout out to the ladies of the WNBA. They've been leading the baton with many of these issues for many years now, but they've been swept under the rug. And they're doing all of this while still fighting for the right to receive equal pay as their brothers in the NBA have been receiving. So, you know, they're not receiving their pay the way that they should be receiving it. And they're still out here fighting for issues involving social injustice and other issues that we're dealing with too. So a huge kudos and shout out to the ladies of the WNBA. Ladies, we love you, we see you, and we thank you for your leadership. Would anybody else like to add any other further comment to this point before we move on to the next point?
I would like to say first to your first question, X, that I feel like the strikes and the boycotts, I just feel like they were soft to Charmin, to be like point blank. I don't see how you can physically come to terms with saying, you know what, we're going to boycott, and then less than 24 hours later be like, well, never mind, we'll play. Like, what did that accomplish? Like, that just reminded me of when me and my sister would get into arguments, and then she would cry to my mom, and when we got down to the nuts and bolts of what the argument was, my mom and my sister would say, well, never mind, just forget about it. My mom would say, well, what's the point of all that crying then? Like, if you're not going to follow through on what you were looking for, what's the point of even starting it up? And that takes me back to my beginning point with what was the Milwaukee Bucks' initial plan? Because if it was me, I agree with what's been said before, in that they should never came back. Because yes, although these owners don't necessarily have the connections, like Taylor was saying, one thing that they do all have in common is their money. And like Eli was saying, if the LeBron sit out, the Kawhi sit out, if the Giannis sit out, there isn't going to be any ball. If the Tom Brady's, if the Aaron Rodgers, if the Aaron Donalds of the NFL sit out, there isn't going to be any money. And so my thing with that is the fact that if you choose to do a boycott, like we've seen in previous generations, commit to that. Because our ancestors before us, they were willing to pay the price. If this isn't right, we're going to stand for it no matter how long it takes. I feel like that's what really what's gotten into these last few generations, is that they're soft. Like, well, do you mean if I boycott, I can't get paid tomorrow? Well, I'm not going to boycott then. And that's not the way they should look at it. If it's right, you're right. And to Taylor and Tevin's point, yeah, I'm not trying to have athletes on a presidential status where, you know, they're making do or die decisions for our country. But I believe that we were all raised on what's right and what's wrong. If you know something is wrong, speak up for it. And like I said before, like Kyrie Irving and Maya Moore did, they were willing to put their contracts on the line. Nike still represents Maya Moore. Nike still represents Kyrie Irving. In fact, we see in this time, like we seen yesterday was the 4-year anniversary of Colin Kaepernick kneeling. We saw the praise and attention Colin Kaepernick get, not saying that he did it for praise and attention, but we see what can come when you stand for the right things. So I'm not trying to say like, man, if you're an athlete, bro, the world's in your hands, you got to lead us. I'm asking you to do what's right. If it was your son, LeBron, if it was Bronny that got shot, would you want justice? Would you be mad? But it shouldn't take a death or a shooting for people to stand up for what's right. This should already be something that's done. We have television, we have Twitter, we have social media. We're seeing stuff. I've seen countless documentaries on different players in the league right now, from Devin Booker to LeBron to Joel Embiid, when they talk about, yeah, at one point when I was younger, I didn't have the financial literacy. I didn't have the knowledge of X product or how I can do better. But once I got into the league, or once I even made it through that first year of college, I started seeing a better life. And once you know, so like the saying is, if you know better, then do better. So all the stuff where it's like, man, well, they don't know better and this, that, and the third, I take that as cop-outs, because even as a grown man, even if you are 21, like Luka, coming into the league, once you get around the grown men and you start getting adapt to that lifestyle and understanding what bar you're being held at, you have to start living by that. You can't be on the top of a bar like a LeBron one day or a Giannis one day, and then the next day decide, well, I'm not going to talk today. But only pick and choose what you want to speak on. This is the thing, like we've said, these players have role models that look up to them. It is, and although they might not have asked for it, and it's not fair. A lot of things in life aren't fair. It's not fair that if you have cancer, you still expected to pay your bills to go through the hospital. That's not fair. But that's the society we live in. So I feel like for the boycott all the way to trying to criminalize Kyrie Irving has been one misstep by the league and leagues. For the NFL, it should be embarrassing that only 9 teams didn't have practice. So you tell me only 9 of y'all felt the cause? Or the only real person I felt like has really stood up was Naomi. And I totally understand why she is going to play now, because it's like, well, shit, if everybody else ain't backing down from their boycott, I'm not going to be the only one to lose bread. I'm going to play in my tournament too this weekend. So I felt like the boycott was just a front because they don't want to step on certain toes of their people, the other people that pay them. I felt like the Black Lives Matter, like Deb said, putting it on the court, putting it on T-shirts, that was a front, because I hate the merchandising of Black Lives Matter, or I hate the merchandising of Justice for Breonna Taylor. That shouldn't be something you make money off of, even if only a select few people have it. Like I've seen social media influencers like Drea wearing T-shirts about it, or I saw a shirt that LeBron wore, "Make America Great Again" hat, and crossed out "Make America Arrest the Cops." No, bro. It seems like they can find all these other ways to, in lack of better words, chase clout to get people's attention. But when it comes to, bro, I ain't gonna play no more until y'all put an end to this. Arrest these people, charge these people. They're not willing to pay that toll. When it comes to, it may be a few months. They're not willing to take that. They're willing to go as far as, well, hey, bro, your Nike rep said, if you hold out for 1-2 days, man, you good. I'll hold out for 1-2 days then.
No, these are all excellent points that you're making here. And I'm actually going to move into the extra point, that the next point that I wanted to go to, because you actually kind of jumped right into it. So I want to speak a little here about the Kyrie Irving thing that a couple of people have brought up. For those who are not familiar with what Kyrie Irving said back in June, Kyrie Irving, who is currently the vice president of the NBA Players Association, he was calling for players to boycott the remainder of the season and to not even come back and have a bubble in the first place, because he felt that them playing would be a distraction to Black Lives Matter. And he also was calling for it in wake of everything that was going on with COVID-19 too, because the cases in particular in the state of Florida, and I can tell you this because I live here, they were starting to surge out of control once again. But he was mainly doing this to bring attention back to social injustice, Black Lives Matter. We need to stay away. We need to continue to fight the cause. We need to go out here. We need to put more substance as opposed to symbols to what it is that we are doing. And he was vilified for it. He was called a disruptor for what he did. He was called crazy for what he did. You even had certain media personalities such as Kendrick Perkins coming out here and saying things on national platforms such as, if you take Kyrie Irving's brain and you put it inside of a bird, it's gonna fly backwards, because Kyrie Irving is confused right now. And I like to say this before I do move on to where I wanna go at this point. To those media personalities, Kendrick Perkins, Stephen A. Smith, and some of the other media personalities out there who vilified Kyrie Irving, but you came out this morning and you wanted to say things and post videos like, oh, we're so proud of the players, man. They stand unified. They did. No, What you should have said this morning, the first thing you should have said was, the first thing I'd like to say is I sincerely apologize to Kyrie Irving for completely disrespecting him as a person and as a man and trying to strip him of his character, because that is what you did. Because when you go as far as referring to somebody as a bird brain, that is attacking them personally. That is attacking their character. That's not even just attacking the stance that they have anymore. They made that personal, Kendrick Perkins in particular, when he said that, and none of them had the guts to even come out this morning and even apologize to Kyrie Irving. But with that being said, what are everyone's thoughts on the NBA only boycotting for a few days and deciding we're ultimately going to continue gameplay? And Eli, you spoke a little on this earlier because we did speak on this last night. But when that announcement first came out today, you were the first person I thought of because we were addressing this, because we wanted to know, okay, the boycott is all good and everything, but how far is this thing going to go? How long is this going to go? Where are you going to take this?
Yeah, I spoke about this a lot last night because at the end of the day, it's kind of repetitive. We see it outside of sports, and it happens a lot, and it's continually happening. We had a moment where, Ahmaud Arbery was shot in the street, and then, it took a long time for justice, months on end, until justice was brought for him. And we boycotted, not boycotted, but we sat there and rioted and looting, and then, also peaceful protesting at the same time. Because, you got people who are mad, you got people who are upset, and they do things that just expresses their upsetness. And then the same thing as, people doing peaceful protesting, because that's the peaceful, mindset that they have. And I truly believe that when it came to the league, that they took a stance, but they did not understand the stance that they were taking. With the entire Black Lives Matter, as Lawrence had mentioned, they took a stance, but really, really, truly didn't understand the stance. Now it turned into really propaganda. It turned into a lot of, this is the hot topic, so we're going to go ahead and side with it. And they're making a lot of money off of the name. And it's really aggravating to see such a really great movement be undermined. And now when I see that a lot of people in the league were getting ready to boycott, and they sat in a room for 24 hours or less and made a decision that we're going to resume play, that made it seem as if the real issue is not important. How do you go into a room and you're wearing Black Lives Matter and it's all over the arena, it's all on the back of people's jerseys, and then you go into a room for 24 hours, and then all of a sudden, we're going to start playing basketball again? That right there is seriously an issue that is not just within the sports, but and it's a worldly issue, but I really want to talk about the country, United States. It's a big issue that we have, is where, something for the moment seems bad, but if it's going to infringe upon, my personal life, then I gotta, go ahead and side with other stuff. It felt like a lot of players were in this meeting and they were like, okay, maybe there was something said that we don't really know about how player salaries or something like that may have been changed if they decided to keep boycotting. Or maybe there was a minor thing or change that was going to happen within the league that's waiting to get pressed out. But for me, to end the boycott in 24 hours and kind of have to side with Lawrence on this, is that we as a generation are a lot weaker than, our prior generations. I don't care what was said in that meeting at all. It's the fact that in 24 hours, you're deciding no longer to protest or no longer to boycott the rest of the season. This should not be a season. This season is over with. For me, this season is completely over with for me. I'm no longer watching the rest of this basketball playoffs. I had a great time. I didn't think they should go in the bubble. They went to the bubble, me not doing anything towards, the entire, quarantine and all that's been going on. Got something else to watch besides saying Netflix movies, okay, whatever it is. And then now you got an issue that they're fighting for and supposedly playing for, and they're going and contradicting exactly why they're there to begin with and what they're fighting for. And I think right now, that is a bigger statement that the league has shown us as people that they truly do not care. So for me, that's really how I stand on this entire opening of that boycott situation. It's not a boycott. It was a day off that these players had. They took a day off. They needed some rest. They stretched back, and they was like, all right, I'll play tomorrow. And I think that's seriously an issue, and I hope that the rest of the sports world does not follow suit with the NBA. I hope that baseball teams continue to boycott. I hope that, other sports, WNBA, I hope they really make a stance and do not follow suit with the NBA, because the NBA has failed. And that right there is a failed system, a failed structure, and I will no longer support the rest of these playoffs if this continues to happen. I hope that a player or someone, I don't care if they're LeBron, I don't care if they're Danny Green, for crying out loud, someone make a stand and decide that they're no longer going to play basketball for the rest of these playoffs, because nothing is being done within the organization. And I think that us as a community, we need to stop fighting each other. Even in the group that we're talking here, I see a lot of them going back and forth on a lot of different issues. Yes, that's what's going to happen in the open discussion. But I think that we need to stop trying to hold specific people accountable for a lot of things. At the end of the day, this same person that's in the NBA now was a high school student, just like you and I. That was just an elementary kid, just like you and I. All they did was go to the league because they were talented. And we chose a route that we chose. Whether it's been something that was predetermined for us or something that we chose on our own, we're not on the same pathway. But yet, at the end of the day, there's still an African-American that is our brother, that is our sister. And we no longer need to be in a position where we're downplaying a random person that spoke up about something. If they're African-American or there's someone that's not African-American, they're speaking about this issue, I support them wholeheartedly. They're speaking against the issue, I don't know what to say to you. But at the end of the day, let's focus the topic back on this boycott. I think this was a front, as Lawrence said. This is an absolute front. This was a day off. I believe that this was absolutely a waste of our time to even have this conversation in general about this boycott. Honestly, it's a waste of everyone's time, because this was not a boycott. This was a day off. That's what I say on that.
All right, and before anybody else goes any further, I'd like to just say shout out to Ciara Brown, who is in the building joining us. Thank you, Ciara, for joining us this evening. Anybody else want to go next?
Let me go real quick, X.
Okay.
I just wanted to say I agree with y'all about Kyrie does definitely deserve an apology. And when the players initially said they were going to the bubble, it was for them to use their platform to speak on social justice. And I think they just really dropped the ball on a big decision they could have made. They could have, if all of them would have said we're not playing, that would have got the eyes of the owners and even some of the regular Caucasian people who tune in, or people who are, not with the movement, just to see that, okay, these people they're not going to entertain us no more. They're not going to just do what we tell them anymore because we pay them. You know what I'm saying? And I think that it's not necessarily, I want them to speak up. I just think everyone should use their platform responsibly. Not saying you should speak up if you know what I'm saying, but just use it responsibly however you feel fit, So that was my whole thing.
I would like to say real quick before anybody else goes, for the for the MLB players who are still, like, the teams that are holding out, in some situations, overall the WNBA has the most to lose, yet they are fully boycott. That's what a boycott truly looks like for the WNBA players. But for the MLB players, they're boycotting and they have more games to play than NBA. Like, they still have much more to go in the regular season, but they're not letting the pressure affect them. They're sending up. And to my brother Devon here, he's an avid Washington football team now fan. And we found out firsthand what social media pressure can do. Because for the longest, their owner was saying, bro, I'm not changing the name. Y'all can forget that ticket. And we see what pressure can do from high ups. FedEx had, when people started going at FedEx, FedEx said, bro, we can't be a part of this. And so it might not necessarily be the athletes themselves, but I believe that the athletes are a bridge that can get things done. If the people go to, if LeBron or Giannis or whoever it may be, go to their people or sit out, well, they're going to get more than just the owner talking to them. They're going to get all their endorsement people are going to talk. And you're not going to get your local Nike retail person talking to LeBron. You're going to get Mark Parker. And if you express these views and these concerns, there will be some type of, like, there can be a solution found. Like right now, I know there's a strike going on at Nike with the black workers because of the shooting. You don't think that all the black workers that work at Nike, with them going on a strike, Nike's going to have to be like, all right, we have to reassess this.
I think as far as my feelings on it, it was a little confusing, and I first of all, I think that the term boycott is being thrown around too liberally. I think it was actually a strike, which is a difference. Because a strike is when you know, refuse your labor, which is what they basically did, even if it was just for one game. But like, yeah, when they decided to come back so quickly like that really threw me for a loop, just because, you know, I mean, I've been kind of on the fence about the way people have, I mean, and you know, Lawrence and X will tell you this just from our conversations, that I've kind of been on the fence about the NBA rebranding themselves as this super progressive league anyway. But I mean, you know, I like you said, I mean, when people are speaking up, I mean, it's kind of refreshing, but at the same time, I mean, you wonder how much of a plan this was. And I think it was kind of a sense of like, similar to All of Us, where it was a natural reaction. Like, you know, a lot of people don't want to, like, they see the videos, and, you know, especially us being Black journalists, we don't want to go into work and stuff, you know, and stuff like that. I think that's what it was, but definitely threw me for a loop. Like, that they didn't do longer. And yeah, salute to the NBA, the WNBA, because they've been about this, I mean, all the way back to Kaepernick. I think they were some of the first people to kneel. They were like, when they wouldn't answer questions unless it was about Black people being shot by police. Like, you know, the NBA did that for like a week, and then I don't know what happened. So it just seems like they'll start something and then they won't push the envelope, but, you know, they do just enough to kind of like, oh, you know, shout out to them and whatever. But I mean, I just want to see what comes out of this. And like, I mean, apparently they are having meetings with owners and are holding their feet to the fire and all that stuff. But I mean, I just, especially when, you know, they talk a big game, whenever the NFL does something, you know, the NBA people are the ones coming out like, oh yeah, we would never do that. So, you know, you want to see how if they hold their feet to the fire, like they keep doing all this talking like they say they are, pretty much.
And before anybody else goes next, I want to add this point to what Eli said earlier about not watching any more of the NBA games. And Dev and Lawrence, you guys know this for a fact through some of our conversations that we've had. When Kyrie Irving first addressed his point, when he first made the statements he made, from day one, I've been saying I stand with Kyrie. I've been saying that from day one. You guys know I've been saying that from day one. And you also know that at one point I said I'm really heavily debating on not even watching any of these games right now, just simply because the fact that they want to come back, it's like you really don't care about what's going on right now. Yeah, you say you want to come down here and use your platform to bring awareness to the issues and everything, but it's like, what's really still the point of you playing? Because everything Kyrie Irving said was true. You went back down to the bubble, you started playing basketball, and that started becoming some of the main topics of conversation once again. And people were no longer focusing on social injustice anymore. They were focusing on, oh, what did LeBron do in this game tonight? What did AD? Oh man, you see what Dame Dollar do in this game tonight? Those were the topics of conversation. So even though this is my job and this is my field, you know what, Eli? I stand right there with you. When they return to gameplay, I will not be watching because I'm very disappointed in how this entire thing went down, because I really felt a type of way today when I got that announcement that, oh, yeah, they're going to continue gameplay. Like, so what was the point in all of this last night? That was the main question I was left asking myself. Would anybody else like to speak on this point next?
And it just made it also, just to add on, it just made it look like, you know, all the people who were calling them out and like, oh, y'all are just like the conservatives and stuff who are saying, oh, they're just grandstanding and they're just doing this and they're doing that. And it almost kind of made them look like, yeah, that's kind of what they're doing, even if it isn't. So yeah, it just looked bad to me.
To piggyback off that, I would have loved to have been a fly on that wall in that meeting to figure out, you know, what exactly was said, but also to get a sense of the different players' body language is like, who was okay with them saying, yeah, let's go back and hoop? Who was against it? Who was the one who was like, all right. Oh, or I would love to have been a fly on the Milwaukee room to hear who exactly was the one who said, bro, we're not playing today. Because it might have been Giannis. And if it was Giannis, that's one thing. But me personally, I think it was a George Hill. I think it was a Sterling Brown. But I would love to have been a fly in those two rooms and even in the owner room, because like we heard today, Michael Jordan was the voice of reason from that party coming back to talk to the players. So I would love to see, to hear what he told Adam and the other owners, because like what's been said already, this is some stuff that has not happened before. So it's kind of hard to say, well, they should do this and should do that. We can only go off what's right and what's wrong. Like what was said before, these people obviously have families and other things they have to take care of financially. But I feel like above anything, they're black men. At one day, your hooping days are going to come to an end. At one day, your endorsement deals are going to end. But from the moment they enter this earth to the moment they leave this earth, they'll be a black man. And that's something you have to take pride in and stand up for. Because if not you or not us as a whole, then who? We've seen what happened when only one of us stand up, a.k.a. Colin Kaepernick. They will crucify you. They'll tear you down as somebody trying to be disruptive. We see it happening to Kyrie right now. Luckily, he's already at his place mentally that he doesn't care what other people think about him. He's going to do what he feels is right, and if you hate it for it, you can kick rocks.
Go ahead, the next person who'd like to touch on this point.
I mean, I would, but y'all said pretty much everything I'm thinking. I mean, I agree, fully with Eli on the point of them boycotting, so to speak, for one day, and then we don't know what is said. Like Lauren said, in the meeting, he would like to know what was said, and the next day, they're playing again. So for me, it's just I could see where they were trying to go with the Bucks, specifically, where, okay, we're going to not play to start this trickle-down effect. But, where was that going to lead to at the end of the day? If y'all were just going to come back the next day and say, all right, we made somewhat of a message, but we got to go back and play. I understand it's a thin line that they walk in where they got to support people and things of that nature. But just like Lauren said, again, you got to stand for the bigger cause at the end of the day, because it's just going to keep happening if you don't.
Definitely correct on that point. And I'll piggyback on one thing Lawrence was saying too, about how if this was the NFL, we'd be all over them for this, because we've been all over the NFL for years on how they handled the Colin Kaepernick situation. We got to call the NBA out on this, on their ish too. We got to call them out on their stuff too, because that was absolutely disappointing what we saw transpire today. But another thing, I'd really like to know what Michael Jordan said to Chris Paul, because they were saying that his conversation with Chris Paul really was a shift in the dynamic of how everything ultimately played out today. Chris Paul, for those who don't know, he is the president of the NBA Players Association. So let's shift this conversation in a slightly different direction.
Real quick. Question for everybody. We all agree that the NBA dropped the ball on this. So if the NFL comes out and decides, all right, we're going to cancel this season, what do you guys think happened? And do you guys think they would do that?
I think some people would be really upset, because some people are already excited to see sports back up again, because some people were upset that they had to cancel just because of the virus. So just think of people's reactions that they're canceling it because of this situation.
Just knowing the NFL's history, it ain't happening. But I mean, they would have an excuse just because, I mean, they're already not having fans in there, so it's not like it wouldn't be as, I don't think it would be as big of a blowback as if they were still letting fans in. So this would be the opening to do that. But it's just, I mean, the NFL is not happening. I'm not even going with
as well. I don't believe the NFL is going to do something like that. I truly believe that the NFL has already made its stance on everything they're going to do, from Colin Kaepernick all the way through. NFL has always stood up against people who stood out against the NFL. I also agree with Mariah on what she said. In all honesty, it's sad that real, issues going on in this world, and people rather care more about sports being resumed rather than addressing the real issues. And that right there is a big problem that we have as a nation, is that sports come before, the lives of people who are killed by, police officers and police brutality, and just, killed senselessly in this country regardless is, it's less important than, sports, especially the NFL. We already know how this is going to turn out, but that's my opinion. I think the NFL is going to continue to play. Players will probably sit out or, make some type of gesture, which has been done in the past. They'll probably pay some type of repercussion for it. Who knows? But I know holistically in my heart that the NFL will still go on.
So before anybody else touches on this, I'll go ahead and answer Randolph's question. No, the NFL season will not be canceled when you have owners like Jerry Jones, who are some of the faces of that league, and he's running key operations there, and him coming out and continuing to double down on points that he's making. No, the league will not be canceled. And one other point I want to make about the NFL, because something very interesting happened today. We all were huge football fans growing up, so us who watch sports in here. So I know we're all very familiar with the name Brian Urlacher, the Hall of Fame linebacker from the Chicago Bears. Well, despite all of the great on-field stuff that Brian did as a player, he came out and revealed today just how rotten he is as a person. So I'll just go ahead and I'll read this off for everyone. The 17-year-old who was carrying the AR-15 at the Kenosha, Wisconsin protest earlier this week, who shot 3 people. 2 of those people are now dead. The 3rd person is seriously injured. His name is Kyle Rittenhouse. Someone posted a picture on Instagram, and it was titled "Free Kyle Rittenhouse, Patriot Lives Matter." And Brian Urlacher liked the image showing support of it. And he also came out today and posted something on his Instagram story saying that Brett Favre played the Monday Night Football game the day his dad died, threw 4 touchdowns in the first half, and was a legend for playing in the face of adversity. NBA players boycott the playoffs because a dude reaching for a knife wanted on a felony sexual assault warrant was shot by the police. That's what Brian Urlacher had to say. And all I have to say in response to that is thank you, Brian Urlacher. Thank you for showing us the piece of trash that you really are. And I will never support you again. And, as much as I'd like to be mad at some of these things that some of these people are saying, I'm actually happy that they're coming out and revealing to us who they really are. Like, show me who you really are. Show me that. Don't put on a front for me. Show me who you really are. So Brian Urlacher, to you, I say thank you. But, we already know who you are, what you reside on. Thank you for showing us who you are. You're nothing more than a piece of trash, the garbage can, going about the rest of your life. I'm pretty sure Mike Ditka is smiling ear to ear right now over what you had to say.
I agree. I was shocked to see it. I won't say I was necessarily shocked because, truth be told, I feel like a lot of these middle-aged older white men and women were raised that way. They were raised to think lesser of us. I feel that same way about Drew Brees, regardless of all the community work he might have done in New Orleans. With that simple message he put out, he showed us who he really is behind closed doors. And I felt like even his apology was phony because, one, the picture was so disgraceful. I won't even have to touch the picture he used. But the fact that he waited until he got all the flack that he did, then come out and apologize. I kind of use the example just like Starbucks. At first, they weren't going to allow their employees to represent Black Lives Matter. And then after they realized, all right, well, we're just not going to go to Starbucks. We'll go to Dunkin' or this, that, and the third. They came out and said, all right, well, we will let you. Well, you're only doing this out of the fact you don't want to lose. You don't want to lose money. And Drew Brees only came out and made an apology because whoever his team is, his wife, whoever it may be, came in and was like, all right, bro, things are getting out of hand here. I need you to put out a little apology to get people to calm back down. And he did it on Instagram. But when you made your statement, you were on a whole interview with Bloomberg. So how that came up and you decided to go into depth about that, I don't know. But I needed that same energy for the apology, which we did not get.
Hey, look, I wasn't shocked, and I'm not shocked at anything anymore. Like I haven't been for the last, ever since pretty much Kaepernick, I want to say, is kind of like, I haven't been shocked about anything more. I don't sit here and pretend like the entire NFL locker room was full of liberal white people. Like, no, it's a lot of ignorant people in there, but yeah, that one wasn't shocking. But my thing is, why are you dragging Brett Favre's name into this? Like, I don't think he asked you to force him to relive that, Everybody has their different ways of reacting to certain things. And, for Brett, that was his way of doing things. And, he doesn't need you to drag his name into something he ain't involved in. And the other thing is, there are some people that, we hate to say shut up and dribble or shut up and whatever, but there's some people who just need to, And in this situation, I think Urlacher needs to just go back to whatever cave he was hiding in and just, be quiet. Because, like that. And, I wasn't shocked in the least bit. Like, the NFL's always been a good old boy league. It has been, so. Definitely.
So I'd like to just ask the ladies a question about this, not necessarily in particular about Brian Urlacher, but just about, how do you feel when you see people of other races, in particular the Caucasian race, come out and they say things that you probably wouldn't necessarily expect for them to say? Does it usually catch you by surprise, or are you just unfazed at this point just by, it's happening so much that at this point I've come to just not even be surprised by anything? And also, like, are you along those lines of, thank you for showing me who you are, or I can't believe that you would say something like this to me?
I just say thank you and keep it moving, because obviously they're not going to change, and that's really how they're raised. So.
Point there. Ciara, would you like to add anything to what Mariah had to say, or any thoughts that you have on the question that I just asked? All right, so I'll pose this question to the fellas now, just with the question I just asked about how do you guys feel about things like that? Because I told you where I stand on things like that. How do you guys feel?
I'm right there with you. At this point, like Devon said, we're used to it, especially from people in the NFL. It's nothing new, because they see us as a certain way, and they're always going to portray us like that, because that's what they've been taught. And it's the same thing in the police department, where you have the younger police officers who may come in and they're taught to do things a certain way, to treat us a certain way. And until we can find a way to restructure that entire system, it's just going to keep happening, because the cycle just keeps going over and over and over again.
I definitely agree with you there. Would anybody else like to speak on this?
I would love to say something. I also would love to hear what Tevin would like to say on this as well, if he's willing to speak on this topic. But me personally, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. It's kind of hard to be surprised when stuff has been happening for so long. When people make certain comments, even if it's an outlandish comment, it's one of those things where you kind of just turn a blind eye to it, because you're just used to those type of comments from, certain people. But for me, I truly believe that my real question will always be, how do we change it? And for me, I always think of from the political side and say that, yes, we have to go vote. We have to vote certain people in, the people that look like us or people that, are of minorities. But, to look the par that we want the country to look like, which is more diversity in a lot of different, fields and sectors. But however, it's more than just putting a face of a department, because a lot of African Americans and minorities are a face of an organization, a department, and it's a picture, but it's not really internalized what's going on within the actual organization or company or even department. So it's more than just electing someone in there, because they'll allow someone to go inside and play a role, but are they really running the show? So, really I want to know, what can we seriously do to make change on how people perceive us? And I always say, it starts with in our community, changing the way that we treat each other. But there's already that conceived notion that we're the aggressors, no matter how we handle every situation. We can handle any situation politely, we'll still be considered the aggressor, no matter what, because that is how society sees us. And I don't know how or why or what way we can do to make that change on how we are perceived. I know it's going to start with us perceiving each other differently rather than, them seeing us differently. Maybe if we come together and unify with each other and we start treating each other with respect and stop disrespecting our own women and, stop disrespecting our culture and people that look like us and stop, the whole gang violence and all that and third. But at the end of the day, there's gang violence amongst every single race. There is violence within every single community, but ours is so much exemplified. And that's kind of why I'm so stuck on, how do we take that, preconceived notion about us away from everything so we can do things without police officers already reaching for their gun when they pull us over and they already got their hands on their waistband while they're asking for ID. How do we change that notion that, I don't want to be that person who has to be in a suit and tie all day long for someone to not feel like they're not threatened by me. I don't want to have to be the person that's always walking around with a briefcase and nice shoes and stuff like that for them to say, okay, he's all right. But, this person who's in gym shorts with a hat on or a hoodie in his car, I'm going to have my hand on his waistband, on my waistband and stuff like that. So I want to know, how do we change that? And I don't know if Tevin has anything to say on that topic right there.
So I'm gonna hop in real quick. I like to look at it as if, like, I'm gonna speak from my neighborhood in Atlanta. I live in Riverdale. I'm on the south side of Atlanta. And one thing I have to realize, well, I don't realize, but it's more so what my community has to realize, is that Riverdale is only a small representation of what just Atlanta is itself. Riverdale is a small little, metropolis, little population right here. And the fact is that a lot of our peers and stuff in our community have never even left the block, which means they've never taken anything serious because they never had nobody teach them the outside world of how to comply with certain things. I like to use the analogy of, like, everybody likes to play, not everybody, I'm not talking about us, but a lot of our community likes to be the one that likes to be the boy that cried wolf. I always want to play the victimized role. I always want to take at fault for, well, they didn't do this, the government didn't do this, I didn't get a stimulus check here, food stamps ain't come here, I got 3 kids, what I'm supposed to do? The fact is that if you want an opportunity, you create opportunity. I'm not saying that we are, we aren't, deserving of these rights and stuff like that. But I think in order for things to actually start from somebody to respect us, is one, you got to change the mentality, how you think about stuff. And with the mentality, it comes, it's like, everybody always looking for a handout in our community. Everybody looks for a handout, which makes us look like beggars. And when you look like a beggar, you look like a peasant. And to a peasant, you can be done with. People make examples out of peasants. And I don't think our people are peasants or anything like that. But I think the mindset that a lot of our people carry is like more so of a beggar standpoint. I need this, give me that. It's an entitlement standpoint. And you can't walk up to somebody who, say, for instance, had pretty much, like I said, we talk about this old money, and then feel as if that they're supposed to give you something just because of their grandfather did this for you, or their father did this, or their great grandparents worked for you and did this and the third. From that standpoint, it's kind of weak in our mindset. Also, as well as that, I know with our culture and our people, they feel as if that, well, I'm just going to be blatantly and so bluntly and just give my blackness to you as if that is something that can be understood. I was talking to my assistant earlier, and we were having the conversation. I said, there's many ways for us to comprehend different things, but we only give people the straight and narrow of just the one way of how we think. There's multiple ways of me to get to the solution of finding out what 10 is. It's 9 plus 1, 5 plus 5, 2 plus 8. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different ways to get to different things. And you got to understand, like, as our culture, we always look at things from more so the fact of a one-sided standpoint, and it's always being attacked. We are always feeling the need to attack the individual versus educate the individual. If a police officer pulls you over and stuff like that, and, you know, and he's profiling you, you got to understand, not from his standpoint, and I'm not sympathizing with no police officer or any of the racial injustice that goes through. But what I'm saying is, if a police officer pull you over, you got you, your partner in the car, let's say it's me, you know what I'm saying, X and goddamn Lawrence in the car right now. And let's say, for instance, I'm the one driving, but I'm real hostile with the officer. As already a given in America, one, why would I be hostile with a police officer? Oh, just because, oh, well, you got me fucked up for pulling me over just because I ain't do shit to you? You see what I'm saying? Like, it goes deeper than that, because for my people, I hate seeing them die. And I'm not talking about Jacoby. I'm not talking about my boy down there in Valdosta. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not talking about those guys. I'm not talking about that. But just as a majority, you can, I guarantee you, we can walk in any hood over here in Atlanta, from Riverdale to, you know what I'm saying, Bankhead, you know what I'm saying, to over there in the West End. We can go anywhere, and all our people, you know what I'm saying, feel as if the police got me fucked up, and if he shoot me, I'm gonna shoot back. Dog, the shit that you saying out your mouth right now is the reason why they gonna keep putting this target on our back, fucking us up. You understand what I'm saying? Like I said, I'm all about trying to teach my people about the right ways to go about things and give them that different perspective to look outside of just the ordinary norm and what you know. You know what I'm saying? Like, in our hood right now, if you leave Riverdale right now, you're going to walk into, you can drive into, like I said, Peachtree, Buckhead, stuff like that. But in every hood, all you got is a liquor store. You got hella gas stations. You got hella McDonald's and stuff like that. They're putting these places in our neighborhoods not to necessarily say that, oh, well, this is all you guys deserve. No, they know for a fact this is all we want. We don't want more than what's you know what I'm saying, pretty much is given. Like, bro, if it was to a point where, you know what I'm saying, like, people really would just understand that it's more to it than just going to school, sitting up there laughing and giggling with your friends in class, trying to be the class clown. It's more than that. And then when Ray Ray gets jammed up, you know what I'm saying, situation, oh, free Ray Ray, or whatever the case may be. Like Ryan, who was just at Savannah State, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, it's a younger gentleman, but he's going around pretty much intimidating women, pulling guns out on them, giving them sexual assaults, giving them all type of stuff. But then we turn around and say stuff like, well, Ryan didn't deserve that. Ryan didn't do this. At the same time, one, we have to take responsibility for the actions that we cause amongst our own culture and our own people, for sure. And also on top of that, how can we expect a white man? How can we expect, you know what I'm saying, the Asian man? How can we expect any other race in this world to respect us if we don't got respect for each other? If I look at you right now and this nigga tell me, oh, fuck that nigga, I don't like how he looking at me, what you think somebody else gonna look at me as? Oh, well, he, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can care less about how I respect this race, because they have no respect within themselves. They're gonna tear it down. So it's like we having these conversations right here. And my only concern and my only thing that I always think about every day is that how can I be a more relatable figure for my people in my neighborhood to understand that the way that we think is very, very little. How can we stop trying to belittle each other? How can we stop always, you know, hating on each other? It's so much money out here in the world for us to make. That's why I quit my job. Before all this COVID had happened, all this racial injustice happened, I was fortunate, just like most of y'all, to go to HBCU and realize that the opportunity that can be created for myself to create this wealth that I aspire to have is something that I have to do on my own. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I want to do for my people. I do everything to support my people. I'm not gonna sit here and say I do everything black owned and stuff like that. But one thing about it, I walk around here with my head high. I never let nobody belittle me. I'm very educated. I would refuse to let somebody tell me about my culture as if it's ignorant. You got to stand up for what you believe in. Like I said, instead of us always going back and forth with each other, it's nothing for you to walk up to one of your brothers and sisters and tap them on the shoulder and just be like, my boy, you know what I'm saying? Let me just holler at you for a minute. You know what I'm saying? Let me talk to you. Like I said, the white man only respects us as much as we respect ourselves. If you walk into the locker room talking about, hey, cuz, what going on? You know what I'm saying? Granted, that's our coach, but they ain't comprehending it like that. They looking at it like, look at this country thug, you know what I'm saying? Black boy, little boy over here from the south side of Atlanta thinking he's arrogant and finna come in my grandfather's locker room and stuff like that to feel as if that he gonna speak upon how he want to speak upon. It's rules we already got in place. You understand what I'm saying? So like I said, nonetheless, I don't never make excuses for nobody to treat us as if that we're inferior or unequal. But it's just like, at the end of the day, for real, with our people, if we want to change, one, your mentality has to change. Two, respect one another. Three, love one another. And that's just how it's going to be. That's just real deal.
You better talk, Tevin. Look at you.
Tev, we definitely appreciate those.
That guy preaching.
Eli, we definitely appreciate y'all.
Hell yeah.
But I'm going to ask everybody to please refrain from using any racial slurs, please.
Look, I want to say something, man. I kind of, brought Tevin to the floor mainly because it's a very similar mindset to how I have with a lot of issues. I speak openly, I speak a lot, I speak thorough, and I really, really enjoy, the way that Tevin speaks. Anybody that knows me, Xavier, Randolph, you guys know how I speak. And I'm really big on making sure that everyone in my community, especially you guys even in here, you guys may not know me, but I want to make sure that everyone not only is just educated, but everyone speaks as if, not even as if, but I know we all have education. We've all been educated. Just speak as if education is kind of the forefront of everything we want to do. Yeah, I don't want people to be in this chat and we talk amongst each other in some type of slang or anything like that. We're well-educated people, and this is how we should be promoting ourselves in any discussion. I like the way that this discussion has been ran because there's not been any type of cutting each other off. There's not been any type of disrespect. There's been nothing but knowledge, pushing, and then challenging each other to think outside the box, which I think Tevin has been doing a very good job today, is allowing people to think outside the box, outside of just, what we see as reality. Another thing I'd like to say is that Tevin hit a couple of points that I wrote on my senior graduation paper back in 2017 was the cycle of poverty. I talked about it a lot because in that paper, it mentioned everything that Tevin had talked about. Why is it that it's a lot easier for us in the African-American community to walk down to a corner store as AKA liquor store than it is for us to get access to go down to our public library? Why is it that every other corner has a corner store? Why is it that there's McDonald's on almost every other block? Why is it that there's fast food instead of, these farmer markets as we see in the suburbs and stuff like that? Why don't we have the same resources that these other communities have? Well, once again, as Tevin mentioned, which was a very good point, is that stuff sells in our community that it doesn't sell in other communities. African Americans have this already established, mentality that we have against us is that we only want certain things. We don't want the positive things in life. That's what's given on us. And it's sad to say, but that's how we treat each other and that's how we treat our community, that we don't want the positive. We'll promote someone's rap music that's talking about guns and slinging drugs and all that in third, and we'll promote that rapper, but we won't promote our brother or our sister that's out here trying to push positive messages towards the community and fixing and uplifting the community. And sadly, that's kind of the negative side that I have when it comes to the African-American community. I say that we have a lot more growing to do. But when by the growing, I mean it's really about educating each other and picking each other up when someone is falling off or when someone is lost. We've all been lost before. We've all been in that situation where we really didn't know where we were going. Some of us in here may have had that mentality where we've lived and not known where the next meal was coming from, But at the end of the day, you are where you are. I don't care what your status is in life. As an African American, it is your job to treat your brother and your sister as if they are the all high as they can be. But also at the same thing that Tevin mentioned is this victim mentality that African Americans have. It's a big, big problem. And I think that it is because of that mentality that we are so slow on the prospering side. Our growing is so slow. And it all comes from us believing that we have to be victim, we are owed something. And I don't want people to believe that African Americans have this mentality that we are owed so much. Yes, we have built this country. You know, we, as in not us, but our ancestors and people before us have built this country. You know, hands and knuckles and blood and tears and all that and third, built this country and got nothing in return. Sadly, that is the way that the cards were drawn for us. But to sit here in today's day and age where opportunity is ability to make a change in your community and still think that the white man or any other person is breaking you down and is causing so much hardship, that is the victim mentality that we need to stray away from. Because when we do have that victim mentality, we are going to be sitting in this position where this police brutality will never stop. We automatically assume that when a cop is going to pull us over, we assume that it's going to be the worst because we already don't value our own lives and our own communities to begin with. So why would this person value my life either? Also, yeah, you know that when a cop pulls you over, yes, as African-American, either male or female, you got to have the best etiquette. You got to be the person who talks with, you know, the pronounced words and all that and third so you can protect your life. Sadly, that's the way life is. But if you're talking to another human being with disrespect, you're going to get disrespect in return. And I can't talk for everyone, no, because at the end of the day, I know there are going to be instances that we don't even know of yet where there could have been an African-American that treated an officer with absolute respect and was disrespected from the beginning when they got pulled over to when they got the ticket. But at the end of the day, we struggle so much within our own communities with how we treat each other. There's no such thing as I'd rather shoot and kill and rob my own brother and sister instead of promoting and lifting up my community. I don't understand that we have in our community. And as I said, and Tevin said, there's multiple ways to fix things. There is no one mentality. And I think that, yes, as African Americans as a whole, we try to find the one thing and try to push towards it when there is no one thing that's going to fix a problem. At the end of the day, there are so many people in this population in our community. That means there are so many different ideas. There is no one way, but something has to be done. And if nothing is being done and all we're doing is continually to talk about stuff that needs to be done and waiting for someone else to do something, guess what? We're going to sit here and argue about why LeBron or why Giannis and why this person's not saying something. Why is it their job? Why is it not your job? You know, and I think that's my biggest issue. And that's why I said I don't like tearing down African American communities, that we talk so much negative about people we believe should say something, when every day we can say the same thing. I don't care what your social status is and what you look like on, you know, social media, what your following is. There's people out here who may have 25 followers that every single day I see them on their story on my Instagram. They're posting everything they can about references and resources to reach out for the whole entire Black Lives Matter. And then you have people who like to complain that nothing is being done and they're not doing anything at all to promote anything that has to do with the cause. And I think that, you know, even in here in this group, I think that's something that we need to work on daily, if we're not doing it already, is promoting a lot of the things that's going on and stop trying to sit on the sidelines. Because we, even at, just like our white counterparts or any other race that sit to the side, we have a lot of African Americans that sit on the sidelines with these issues as well. And that's a big problem that we have. There's no such thing as sitting on the sideline. Either you're in the game or you're not. So that's it. That's all I got.
Would anybody else like to address any more points on this topic before we move on to the next point?
I would just want to say that just with all of them, Tevin and Eli, what they were saying goes back to my first point when I got on here was, how can we change or create our own narrative? Whether it's for change our narrative about voting, how we look at women, how we spend our money. Like, we need to, I don't know how we can do that, but with conversations like this, of course, but I know we need to focus on the narrative that is portrayed, that is given to us and that we put out. Like, that's the main thing that we need to do, I feel like.
I also wanted to add, I 100% agree with what Tevin and Eli had to say. And, you know, a pet peeve of mine is being in public spaces when our people, for lack of better words, like act our color. Like, you go to Walmart and you hear people cussing at the peak of their speech. You hear people blasting music inside of a store with, like, you know, uncensored music as loud as they possibly can. You see all this kind of stuff, And a lot of times I just ask myself, like, why? Was it absolutely necessary to your survival for you to be doing that right now in the store? Was it absolutely your survival for you to be yelling at the bank teller because your account is overdrawn? Like, those kind of things are just like mind-boggling. Just like, but yet you want that person to turn around and help you, whether it be getting a loan or whether it be reaching that item on the top shelf. And that's something I feel like, I believe I told this to X before, I feel like us as a Black community, we stand in our own way more than the white man. And like one of the things I've gotten to my fellow Morehouse brothers is that I don't like when we call ourselves the N-word or stuff like that, because then although it's not right, it invites the white man to do so. Because they're thinking, well, if he does it and it's cool by him, if I do what he does, I'll be liked. So I feel like we have to take greater responsibility, like Eli was saying, within loving ourselves, knowing our own self-worth. We are children of God. Like, there's no higher hierarchy than that. But yet, like Tevin was saying, all people look for is a corner store, is a drugstore right there on the side. Where can I buy some Rillos? Stuff like that. I have never heard or seen a brother on the street come up to me and be like, hey man, do you know where the nearest H&R Block is? I'm trying to buy some stocks. You don't never hear that. And that's because that's how they are raised to grow. For a while, back when our ancestors were slaves, I believe the hottest thing was you got to get out to get an education. And somewhere along the lines, it's turned in, man, going to school is soft. I don't know when necessarily became soft to better yourself, but I feel like that has definitely crippled our people, because I feel like another thing that our community runs from is the popular word of gentrification. I don't know about you all, but when I see a new Chick-fil-A being built or a new building being built, I like a new building. I don't want to go into some building that Martin Luther King used when he was alive. That's hand-me-downs to me. Now, yes, I believe there's a way to go about it. But on the flip side, if we were to take ourselves out of, man, they're evicting these people out of this place, they ain't gonna have nowhere to live. Well, we should first look at, there must have been some point in that person's life where they were able to afford living there to begin with, or else they would never have been able to renovate that house or apartment. So along the lines of that, what were they doing to not keep up with those funds? Now, I understand that, circumstances happen, and by all means, I understand that. But a lot of times, at least over here in Atlanta, I'm over here on the West End, the big thing was how they were gentrifying because of the stadium, and now people can't afford to do that. Well, that turns back to why it's so important to go out and vote, because you can't sit there in your house and be, oh man, I'm not gonna vote, my vote don't matter anyways, and then get mad when the outcome of the voting isn't in your favor. Just like with Trump being president, everybody wants to boo and hate. The first question is, did you vote? Because if you didn't vote, I don't want to hear any booing or hating. You're part of the issue. You didn't vote to make change. When it was Obama, everybody wanted to go to the vote. We don't have the luxury to pick and choose when we want to vote. And I'm not just talking about the presidential election. It needs to be for as low down as your city's mayor or the governor of the state. It needs to be in those local levels, because if we can impact enough of the local levels, it won't matter who's at the top, because he has to get checked by the lower levels, and vice versa. So I feel like our Black community is too caught up on tit for tat. Well, man, if he doing this, I gotta do that. Or if she doing that, I gotta do this. Instead of worrying about ourselves and bettering ourselves each and every day. Because how are you truly bettering yourself if you gotta bring down your brother or your sister? I tell my friends this all the time. I believe, to my knowledge, I think we are the only race that if you trying to go pro, if Tevin trying to go to the NFL or X trying to go to the NBA, a Black man would be the one to tell him, bro, you ain't gonna make it. But you look at a white man or an Asian dude, their race are pushing them. Man, if that's what you want to do X, Y, Z, go for it. And I'm not saying every Black person in our community will bring you down, But for majority part of them, they will, unless you exhibit those phenomenal attributes that make you stand out to be a man. He is league. He is cold. Like, I'm sure we all have known people at our respective schools who play on an athletic team that make you question, bro, why is he even on the team? And so it's not necessarily something that only a few people are gifted with. It's for those who choose to pursue it, no matter what anybody else is going to say. Because those are people, that's that 1%. No matter how much somebody tries to wave you away from the path, you have to stick to your dream, to follow your dreams. But the whole, man, yeah, I'm just going to, like, if you got $20, I'm going to use that whole dub on the double weed. Now you broke. Like, that's not building towards anything, and that's not even wanting better for yourself. You tell me $20 that you could save, that you could get something that would last, you rather spend it on something that'll be gone in 5 minutes. And I just feel like that's the mindset that our people have, that I don't necessarily know when time frame it was initially produced into our Black minds, but I don't believe it was there always. Because I believe from slavery days, we were fighters. We learned to make the most out of nothing. And even now with Corona and quarantine going on, I tell my friends, even though I'm the only one with this opinion, I believe a lot of good can come from this quarantine. I believe that with the online classes and the way work is online, this will really eliminate any excuse for you not to get work done. Because back in the day, they didn't have computers. They didn't have smartphones as phones. They had to look everything up to find an answer, to call somebody, to get an interview. But now we have it at the click of our fingers, and I felt like for a minute it enabled us. It made us more lazy. Because you knew, man, if I got a paper due at 10, I wake up about 8 o'clock, I can bust it out real quick. It may not be good, but I can do it. Opposed to back in the day when, man, the library don't open till 10. So you got to do your work the day beforehand.
No, these are all definitely great points that you all have made here with this point in particular. And shout out to you, Lawrence, Eli, Destin, Tevin, and anybody else that had anything to say on this. Eli, do you have any other thoughts you'd like to add on this before we move on to the next point?
No, I honestly just wanted to say I appreciate all you guys for having the wisdom and the knowledge that you guys had on that topic, because that's a really big topic that can go on for hours and hours and hours. And for you guys to, be able to condense it into the time that we did, I do appreciate it. I know Xavier's got a lot of other topics to hit on, but I really want to appreciate the way that you guys are handling this, the way the conversation and how it's going in general. It's very respectful, it's very caring, and it's, I just want to say that I really enjoy the way this is going.
For sure. So I want to address the next point by going to this, and I want to speak about the protests that we all saw earlier this year. Some of them are still happening in other areas in our country right now, but for the most part, in every state, in almost every city, in wake of the George Floyd murder, when we learned more about Breonna Taylor's murder and Ahmaud Arbery's murder, we started to see a mass amount of protesting that started happening in this country. But Eli, you touched on this earlier, and we've also spoke about this off camera. We spoke about this yesterday. And it was a point that you made that I also agree with you on this as well. I never came out here and said in the midst of the protesting, we're finally getting that real change that we wanted. And the reason I never said that was because I understand our generation. And even though they were out there leading the charge, we are an impatient generation. Not necessarily saying that about us here on this call, but we know that our generation is very impatient and they don't like to give things time to marinate. They kind of live by this concept that is not true. That is, Rome was built in a day. No, Rome was not built in a day. And the biggest fear that I had with this, and it came into fruition in July, when are they going to tail off with these protests? Because I wanted to see it continue. I wanted to see that push continue to happen. But there was a point, like towards the end of June, a little after Juneteenth, actually, when we started to see things tail off. And that was my biggest fear with all of this. So the question that I have for everyone is, what are your thoughts on the protests and when exactly they ended? I mean, did you feel that they should have gone on longer, or, what are your thoughts on that?
I believe the protests ended the moment that we changed into another hot topic, as I said when I first got on here. We started talking about pedophiles, and we started talking about, Epstein once again, bringing his name out the mud. We were talking about a lot of other things that were considered a hot topic. Pizzagate, I know that's a really big issue, of course.
It's 9 weeks, Self.
Yeah, it's a lot of things, and it's sad to say that our situation lasted just for a small period of time, and that's why I said before. And then Lawrence and he has made a very big point on this, and then he said basically we don't really boycott before like our former generations did before us, and we don't really go out there and protest like we should. Protests used to last months on months, and then even into the years if need be. And now we'll sit here and protest for a couple of weeks until the next big thing to talk about comes out. We allow the paradigm shift to change constantly within this generation, mainly because social media has allowed us to look at multiple different issues at the same exact time, rather than focusing on one issue at a time. We would like to try to handle 5 different tasks at one time, rather than identifying a task that's been here for so long. And instead of attacking that first, we'll go ahead and attack something that's fairly new. And I honestly, seriously don't see any type of headway that's going to be made with the protests, because once again, the protests are going to start back up again, like it started up with, the whole situation with George Floyd. And now it's going to start back up again with this situation with Jacob. However, sadly, we do know that it's going to die down. And when it does die down, you're going to have a few people out here who are still going to be pushing the movement, a few people who's going to be talking about it, but the nation in general is going to move on to something else. We're going to be talking about the election coming up very soon, more than we're going to be talking about the death of Jacob Blake. We're going to be talking about a vaccine coming out before the election, before we're talking about the death of Jacob Blake. This is going to last until the government decides to push something out that's more important than this. Sadly, we got to say something that's more important than the life of African Americans. But I don't see any type of long-term, effects that's going to help us in the future. But I do want to say this, that yes, Xavier, you made a good point with generation. Our generation is very impatient. And I can honestly say, believe it or not, the future generations are in very good hands with those Generation Z kids. I honestly want to say it. For a group of kids and TikTokers on Generation Z to sit here and do what they did in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and buy out majority of the tickets to a Trump rally. And he shows up to basically almost an empty rally when he expected thousands upon thousands. And all those tickets were pre-bought out by Generation Zs to try to show him that we will no longer stand for this bigotry that you've been pushing on in this country. And especially for someone like me who works around kids all the time, especially the younger generations, I've seen, and I said this yesterday, they don't see color at all. They actually stick up for everyone, no matter what their color looks like. Because one, they're growing up with a lot of kids who are biracial, a lot of diversity is going on with inside these institutions growing up now than we had when we were growing up. A lot of issues that they're hearing about now that we seriously didn't hear about growing up. They're living through all of this as children, and we didn't live through this as children. We're living through this as an adults. We have a different mindset on how we're dealing with it based on how we were brought up. They're brought up in this, and they're making a huge change, and they're going to be the ones to make the change for future generations. And I can honestly say that, yes, we are very knowledgeable in this generation. We're changing how our families, and we're working on generational wealth within our generation. We're actually the generation to start pushing that. That's awesome. But they're the generations that's going to make real, honest change. And that's what I seriously believe, is that, yes, they're the ones that's still protesting, believe it or not. It is the young kids in the streets, the teenagers. I've seen more teenagers protesting than I've seen adults. I've been to countless. I've seen more teenagers than I've seen adults at these protests. And that right there gives me, warmth to my heart to know that we're not going to be done with this story here, because they're the ones that's going to be writing the policies on how this story continues. So that's all I got to say on that.
All right. Anybody else have any further thoughts they want to say on this? Anybody want to elaborate on what Eli just said?
I do believe in the generation, although I feel like I'm biased and feel like they're just like a little bit softer. I do feel though they're tech savvy enough to impact powerful change. Because like you're saying, they bought up all the tickets and didn't show face. I bet they bought up them tickets in a day. Like I feel like, we see it in TikTok trends and all that kind of stuff. And even in the YouTube, even though YouTube is old, they're finding ways to monopolize off these technological ways of life that are enhancing by almost what it seems to be the day. So I definitely believe that, the next generation coming up, the young kids will definitely be well equipped to carry our country into the right path. To me, it just comes down to the question on not if they want to, because we see the want to, but how long will the want to be a part of them? Or will they grow weary just like older generations have and be like, well, it didn't work. We tried it for X amount of years. It didn't work. It's same old, same old.
DJ, Tev, y'all got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just keep mine brief. I think what's going on now in the world is that I think the older generation is more so afraid because they know for a fact that these old ways are becoming extinct. The thing that we have that a lot of those older generation people didn't have was pretty much the resources to information. I'm not even gonna say education, but it's more so the resources to information. And the thing is, these kids ain't stupid. These kids are not, they're not, oblivious to the fact of the things that's going on in this world. So, with that being said, it's like the path of which these things are going, I feel within the next 20 years, this conversation that we're having right now won't necessarily be about, are they killing black people? It's going to be more so about, how can we continue to keep up the equal opportunities that we're presenting to the table? Because these younger politicians and stuff like that, that will be coming to making, I think they'll be a little bit more fair. I think they'll be a little bit more open. And hell, by the time we hit 40 and 50 years old, I hope and I pray that, we have some people in office like ourselves with these like minds to the point where they can actually make some decent amount of change within the world. And not to mention, you got to look at it too. We got a black woman running for vice president on the Democratic Party. That's what I'm saying. Like, stuff is already taking a change, whether, people want to see it or not, or if they want to continue to make the excuses. But, dog, it's a black woman as the running mate for vice president for the Democratic Party. People hearing what's going on out here for sure. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, we got to keep pushing forward. Like they said, we got to give these young kids the resources and teach them the right things, because it's really on us to teach them now. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it really is. So we just have to continue to teach them the right ways and instill the right messages in them. That's all.
DJ, you got anything you want to add to this?
Nah, pretty much. I think they covered everything. I think they did a good job of discussing everything. This generation is like as they would say, a popcorn generation, I guess. So we just gotta be able to stick with stuff and stick things out. Even if it might get a little shaky, we do gotta stick things out. So I agree with everybody.
Yeah, Tevin pretty much hit the point I had right on. They have the access to all the information now that even us coming up, we didn't have. So Lawrence said it best. Do they have the durability, in the long run, to continue to push for that change? Because it's a crucial time right now where if the community as a whole can come together and we act, we can really start seeing, the changes that we want. Of course, it's going to take some time, but like you all have said, if they have the durability, to keep pushing through, we'll eventually get there.
And Eli spoke on it earlier too, and I agree with him here. Generation Z, they give me a lot of hope. People give them a lot of flack for the TikToking and all the other things that they do. We have to learn to start shining a light on the positive things that we see our young people do, and people do in general too, but especially our young people. They get a lot of flack for their use of social media and how many hours of a day they're on social media and their phones, their technology. But what about all the positive things that they're doing out here? They're really out here pushing for change. So I definitely feel great about Generation Z and where we are with them. With that being said, I'd like to now address the final question that I have here for everybody tonight. When it comes down to the young kids of Generation Z, I'm not talking about the teenagers. I'm talking about the children who are younger than 10 years old. I want to ask you guys this right here. How exactly do you feel is the best way for us to educate those children on the world that they live in without frightening them, but also making sure that they are aware that it's not peachy keen and the grass isn't always green?
All right, so I wanted to say something about this. I want to make sure nobody else had anything to say. I want to start off by saying that we failed very miserably when we started off with the protests with the, gosh, I lost my train of thought. But anyways, we failed miserably with the protests that happened. I believe that Nickelodeon dropped the ball when they went and they did the entire breathing on a black screen for 8+ minutes. A lot of kids watch Nickelodeon, and it's hard as a parent to explain why there is breathing going on the screen, and it scared a lot of children for 8 minutes long. It's kind of hard to educate a child that's less than 10 years old about real world issues that they don't understand because they go to school, and children are really colorblind unless it's taught in their family to not be. And children go to school with every other race. And it's kind of hard to teach a child that, hey, that person that doesn't look like you is going to one day be someone that you're going to have to care for because the world won't care for them. And, you know, growing up, I think that is something that Lawrence had mentioned, you know, right from wrong, you know, good people are good people. And that's all you can do when you have children is to educate the young children the difference between right and wrong. That is a parenting thing. But also, as I mentioned to you before, you know, it takes a village. It's not just on the shoulders burden of the parents, it's the community in general. That's parents, grandparents, godparents, church, anything that you go to, anything like that. That is the burden of our community, to make sure that our children and the children after them understand the difference between what is right and what is wrong, how to love one another, regardless of what they may look like. I don't care if the person is homeless. I don't care if the person is wealthy. I don't care if the person is poor or whatever it is, white, black, Asian. At the end of the day, you have to teach your children to love each other regardless, no matter what it is. And that's not a hard task to do. It's the fact that when kids go to school and they're living with kids whose parents aren't teaching them that, that's when it becomes an issue. You can teach your kids so much at home, but they're going to go into the real world. The real world sadly starts off in like middle school. You know, reality of it, you know, some of us may have heard our first racial slurs in elementary or middle school, even going into high school and stuff like that. But then, you know, sometimes in elementary school, you don't even have that issue. But you get taught in your home to love each other, but there's other people who just won't teach their children that. And sadly, I don't think that is something that's going to stop immediately. I do think that that right there is something that's going to take a few more decades, and we're not at the moment where every household or majority of the households will be teaching each other the right thing to do. I think that Generation Z and their children will be a great pathway to start. We're doing a good job now having these discussions, but sadly, we all know everyone that in the 20s and our 20s and stuff like that, we all know someone that's on the wrong path, someone that's selling drugs, someone that's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, someone that's in the prison system. And sadly, they're going to be the ones having children as well. And, you know, not saying that people can't change their lives, but there's people who just don't want to. And they're going to be raising kids to live the lifestyle, that grind lifestyle, the same way that they've lived. And we're going to be the ones trying to teach our children that it's okay to be different from the other African American. And it's sad that you got to say that, the other African American, because there are two types, multiple, actually more than two types of African Americans. And that's the sad part. There's no self-identity in our community. It's either, you know, someone's going to be a bad person, someone's going to be a good person. That's amongst every race. But sadly, it's going to be hard to teach our children that, you know, to be good to people when they don't do good on you. Even though that's from a biblical sense that, you know, that's a way to do it. But like I said, they're going to have to go to school. They're going to have to go to the real world, and someone's going to show them a lot differently than we're teaching them. And I don't think that that's a topic that we're ready to have going to fruition now. I think that's a long-term process.
Yeah, because everything that they see would be contradicting what you're teaching at home. So, you know, you're teaching them at home right from wrong, you know, and you try to put them with people who are also going to teach them, you know, the right values in life. But, you know, they're going to go to your normal places, just being around the community. And if the community is not as one already, then it's always going to contradict what you're saying to them. So if they truly don't understand right and wrong, they'll always pick that wrong side.
Anybody else have any thoughts that they'd like to say on this?
I want to say something what you said, Randolph, with the right or wrong thing. Just one thing, you know, sometimes in our communities, wrong is our right. You know, think about it on that sense, that sometimes in our community, all they know is wrong, and wrong is considered the right thing to do. You know, I was growing up in a bad situation, and I was raised well by my mom. You know, I got an older brother, a little brother, and I had one mom. And I was raised to love everybody, but at the same time, you know, growing up and seeing people making money on the side, and I couldn't understand why I struggled so much growing up, but this person has so much money, and you kind of lean towards to ask them, like, how are you able to do this?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Randolph said on his side, is that, yes, you can teach them right from wrong, but they're going to see other things. And sometimes those other things enlighten them a lot more than the right, because majority of things that's going to enlighten them is going to be the wrong.
Especially with the social media now.
I agree. I feel like there are a lot of things that, you know, like for us being Black, a lot of things that for us are bad would be good. Like just like the late John Lewis, RIP, says, like, good trouble. Like sometimes you have to be able to stir the pot. And that kind of is how I look at things when I tie everything back to, you know, what these leagues are doing with the boycott and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you have to be willing to make these corporations mad or do whatever the case. I remember, I believe it was Game 2 with the Mavs and the Clippers, where Luka was just irate. He was getting any calls. They were beating him up on the court, and he was trying to talk to the ref. They weren't hearing it. He would cry to the ref, and they weren't hearing it. And at one point, he's like, all right, I'm just going to pick up a tech because no other way you're going to hear me right now. And that's how I view, like, even Black people in our everyday struggle. No, I'm not saying go out there and, you know, murder somebody in broad daylight. But as we saw, when the looting picked up, they're like, oh, snap. They're willing to go to any extent. Maybe we should hear them out. So if the right, like, and that's what, that doubles back to my point about we broke off too early, because when we applied the pressure, the government, the city officials, whatever the case may be, they were folding. They were like, bro, we got to hear these people out. They are fed up. But as long as they can keep us under their foot, they will do so. Just like when you see bugs and ants in your living space, in your kitchen, as soon as you see them, you kill them. Because if you allow them to roam and keep going, they gonna go to their people and they gonna come back more. And they gonna keep coming back until they infest the place. And that's how I feel the white man views us as Black people. We'll keep them under our foot, but when they rise up, they outnumber us. We are in the areas they value most. We are in entertainment. We are the culture. We provide such a strong impact on the world that if we say no and come together and say no, it's no. We've had enough.
Tev, you got any thoughts you want to add to this?
this is gonna date back to me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, I won't never speak about what I feel like the expectations of what I would want other people to do for me. I always look at what I can do for myself. And at the end of the day, we going through a lot of turmoil and stuff like that. But if they're gonna continue to treat me as such, I'm not saying we're gonna stop fighting, but I'm gonna keep working. I'm gonna keep building the platform. I'm gonna keep working my moves in silence while they're quote unquote giving us a distraction in society and, you know, trying to take our eye off the prize. I'm just gonna do what they do to us, and that's create a platform, a foundation, and I'm gonna sneak up on them. You know what I'm saying? This time right now, it's unfortunate that a lot of people lost jobs and stuff like that. But while these people lost these jobs and lost the housing market, I already am qualified for 3 houses that I thought about just going to go buy, turn them into Airbnbs, or maybe turn into a shelter and stuff like that. Buying up some little property, you know what I'm saying, off a little land and stuff like that. Just my personal goals and stuff like that. But why you want to give us this bull, you know, and whatever to just, you know, kind of just feed us this little bone, that's fine. Do what y'all got to do. But at the meantime, it got to still be some like-minded people like myself out here in the world that's like, you know what? They're giving us a real fucked up situation. So let's try to find some positivity in this, and let's sneak back up on them, and let's take back what was ours. As far as my concern, Atlanta is a black city. It's far beyond a black Hollywood. It's a black city. It's really the peak of a lot of black culture. And, you know, with that being said, I feel as if that within our city, within our culture, nobody can control your city as if that you own or run majority of the property in the land. You know what I'm saying? Nobody can really tell you how to do your business and stuff like that if you own. You ain't renting, you're not leasing, you own. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, from all of the things that's going on in the world, like I said, I'm always very cognitive to the things that's going on. And I would like, you know what I'm saying, everything to keep going. We keep applying pressure. We keep doing what we need to do. But in the meantime, while my other brothers and sisters on the front line do what they got to do, I'm on the back line just making sure we taken care of and making sure we got somewhere to stay. Make sure we got some food to eat. Make sure we got the resources to continue to support our people in the fight. You know what I'm saying? So it's not always about, like I said, for me, we got to support each other in any way possible. So, you know, I'm all for everything. Like I said, you know, my whole thing was look at everything in a different perspective. So, like I said, my perspective is just, you know what I'm saying, I got to do what I got to do to make sure that my people can continue to do what they got to do. So that's just it for me.
All right. Does anybody else have any further comments they'd like to add on any of this?
I would like to say, like, you know, moving forward, I know X, you brought the question, like, since the players unfortunately did decide to go back and play ball, what happens if, you know, not if, but when there is another shooting? Honestly, as unrealistic as it may be, I feel as if, though, we should play, and when I say we, I mean the wealthier black community, that is, we should stop living this little front of, support black business, support black business, and truly invest in black businesses. We should pull out of all the Chases, the Nikes, the Adidas, the Puma, the Bank of America, and start to truly invest into our black community. We should separate ourselves from the country, not physically, but financially, mentally, to where it's like, all right, our black dollar is staying within the black community. Our time is being only spent in the black community. I know Ice Cube has the 3-on-3 league. Evolve that, you know, start to build up our own basketball league, build up our own football league. Not too long ago, Dwayne Johnson just bought the XFL. Start to branch out in those areas to where it's like, unless y'all accept the change that we are fighting for, we will leave you high and dry, and then see how much your money matters, or see how much money you can make then. Now, a lot of the owners, like I believe is either Tevin or Taylor said earlier that, you know, a lot of the owners in professional sports, that's just like a side gig for them. Like they make their money in other ways. But the revenue that these sports franchises can bring in isn't a pretty penny that you can just go pick up out you can go get a loan for either. Because if that was the case, I don't believe colleges like Alabama and Texas would be fighting so hard to have their college football season. because they know how much money's at stake for them to lose.
All right. Does anybody else have any further comment they'd like to say on this?
Good dialogue, gentlemen. I appreciate the conversation for sure. Been real good tonight, real good.
It definitely has been. I really appreciate you guys. I appreciate everyone that we had on the call tonight. We will continue to have more conversations like this in the future. As I said to begin tonight's show, Xtreme Sports is back. This isn't the way we plan to come back, but what else did we plan for to happen in 2020 that's happened?
That's a fact. That is a fact right there. 2020 been a roller coaster, but real quick, gotta say shout out to everybody who was on tonight. I like to hear different perspectives of situations like these to see, what I can do to better myself and really go out and help, and then try and give other people perspective of what I think and see. So what we all can do as a community to better the community. So shout out to all y'all. Of course, make sure when it's time to go vote, we all out there. We go vote. Make sure you go tell all your people, go vote, because we gotta start acting. And that's one of the things we have to do to see that action in motion.
Shoot, you guys already know I've been saying it the entire time throughout this call. I appreciate all of you guys that hopped on this call today. Those who left earlier, I enjoyed having the females on here as well, mainly because it's always a different perspective than what we normally hear. A lot of men, we have this, bickering back and forth, but today this was not the case. A lot of females came on here, and, a lot of people think of African-American females as, agitating, aggressive. As once again, we as the African-American community today, we've been a prime example of what it's like to really be the forefront of change. Whether it's just been changed with regular conversation or just be changed the way we present ourselves. This was a very, formal, informal conversation. I want to make sure it's said in that, it was an informal, open discussion, but it was a very formal the way it was managed. I think that it was a lot of bright minds, a lot of great thinkers that's in this chat. Also that's inside, this video that we're going on with. I think that I don't want it to be undermined about how intelligent so many people in this, in this message right now is going to be pertaining to, but it shows that HBCUs do work. I really want to say that, and I want to holistically say that for anybody that's listening to this, video, that step outside of your comfort zone. You don't have to be an African American. You don't have to be, part of that culture to really step outside of your comfort zone. Another thing that I would love for us to talk to at a later time is about the young kids who are deciding to go to HBCUs who are top 5 prospects, putting money back into the community. We talked about that a lot today, and I really, really think that that's a great thing that we're doing. And we're not only putting the money back into our communities, us in this chat today, we're putting knowledge back into our communities that is missed. So I do appreciate you once again, Xavier, for allowing me in general to be on this call. And everybody else, I appreciate you guys. If you guys wanted to, I follow everybody. I don't care who you are. Drop it down in the chat. Your email address, your IG,
drop it.
Forms, and I'll drop mine there as well. And I'll follow anybody that's watching this video.
DJ, you got any closing thoughts you'd like to say?
Yeah, I just want to thank you and X and Randolph, my bad, for inviting me. It's been a minute since I actually had a good, healthy conversation with a group of people, especially with discapacity due to, COVID and everything. So I just want to thank y'all once again, and thank you to Eli, Lawrence, Tev, y'all. Man, I know y'all was wondering. I was just listening, man, because y'all, the things y'all were saying were just on point for me. So I appreciate y'all. For real, man. Continue, keep going. Y'all black men. We got each other. I got y'all. Y'all need anything, hit me up. I dropped my IG in there. So that's my Instagram and Twitter as well. So y'all need anything, I'm here.
Definitely. Dolph, you got anything else you'd like to add to this?
Nah, pretty much summed it up, appreciate all y'all coming on, man. Really, like Destin said, really haven't had no real conversations like that, with this whole COVID thing. Hopefully we can get that in order. Oh yeah, that too. Make sure y'all out there wearing y'all masks, social distancing, because we got to get rid of this COVID. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Appreciate all y'all.
Lawrence, you got any closing thoughts you want to say before I close everything out?
It's an honor to be on here with all y'all. I love coming together with, fellow people, fellow men and women, for that matter, that look like me, that, that care really. Because a lot of time our people, we'll just sit there and won't say anything. And I was raised to believe like closed mouths don't get fed. So I love seeing that, we're passionate about it. Although we have different views, like my brother Tevin was saying, there's more than one way to get to a solution. And so I feel like the first step is realizing that there is a problem. And I feel like that's one thing that we could all agree on throughout the various topics that we did discuss tonight. And moving forward, at least that I know that, going forward, we all are looking for change. We're all looking for a positive change.
Definitely, for sure. And I'll just go ahead and ask now, did everybody collect everybody's contact information already?
Can y'all drop that in the chat?
Oh, yeah, let me go ahead and drop that in for you guys.
Hey man, if anybody get married or anything like that, hit me up. I got the shoots on deck.
Well, shoot, let me go ahead and tell you this now. Tell you this now. God dang, boy, I done got engaged.
Tev got it. Tev really got the juice. Tev really out here doing his thing with the photography thing, man. Big ups to Tev for real, because I mean, he really took that leap of faith on himself, and like it's really gonna take him to all the places he want to go. Shout out to Destin, man, the Players Den podcast. We look forward to connecting with y'all again more in the future. You guys keep doing a great job as you're doing, providing the great content that you're providing. Lawrence, my NABJ brother, man, but also, man, you like a little mentee to me, man. I really appreciate you joining us here tonight. We're going to continue to collab in the future. Eli, Randolph, man, y'all my brothers. Y'all already know exactly what it is. We all brothers in here, but y'all know we done been through some things with each other, man. So, like,
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. But, as Destin said, man, we got each other. I got y'all. Y'all got me. We all here for each other. This has been exactly what I intended for this conversation to be tonight. This has been passionate. This has been enlightening. This has been educational. This has been riveting. And I hope that those who will watch this video pick up everything too. Eli made an excellent point earlier that HBCUs do work. You have 6 men who are products of HBCUs in here right now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, all of our guests who are actually in here tonight are products of HBCUs. Right now, you're looking at 5 graduates of Savannah State University and an upcoming graduate of Morehouse College. So, please put more consideration into going to attending and graduating from HBCUs. Eli, we will be having that conversation later on in the future about student athletes, top 5 high school recruits, looking more towards going to HBCUs and really shifting the paradigm on that one there. But this has been great. I absolutely enjoyed everyone tonight. Once again, thank you all for coming out. We really look forward to having more conversations in the future. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Xtreme Sports. Once again, thank you to everybody who joined us tonight. Thank you to you fellas as well. And we'll see you guys when we see you.
I'm out.
Yes, sir.
All right, y'all stay safe.
Yeah, guys, take care.